Beneath the soil of forgotten landscapes and etched into the faces of towering cliffs stand monuments that defy every explanation we thought we had. Enormous stones carved with impossible precision, cities aligned with the movements of the stars. Structures so advanced they seem to whisper of knowledge lost to time. From the mist-shrouded plateaus of South America to the windswept deserts of Egypt and the ancient valleys of Palestine, civilizations long vanished left behind puzzles that challenged not just historians, but the very foundation of science itself. How did ancient builders lift stones weighing hundreds of tons without machines? Why do certain monuments align with constellations visible only thousands of years ago? And what secrets lie buried beneath the ruins we've barely begun to uncover? Each site raises questions that stretch beyond archaeology, reaching into mystery, myth, and the edges of human imagination. These aren't just relics of the past, they are riddles carved in stone. So sit back, relax, and join us as we journey into the world of ancient structures science can't explain, where every stone tells a story, and every answer opens the door to deeper mystery. Beneath the rolling plains of Cappadocia in central Turkey lies a world few could ever imagine. From the surface, the region is already otherworldly, its soft volcanic rock carved by wind and rain into towering spires and strange honeycombed cliffs. Villages here are marked not only by stone houses and cave dwellings, but also by something far more secret. Hidden doors leading downward, into the earth itself. At Derinkuyu, one such door reveals an astonishing labyrinth. Descending into its passages, the air grows cooler, the walls closer, the silence heavier. What begins as a narrow staircase soon opens into vast chambers, halls, and corridors, stretching more than 280 feet below the surface. This is not a mere shelter or cave. It is an entire underground city, capable of housing tens of thousands of people, complete with wells, kitchens, wine presses, stables, schools, and even chapels. Archaeologists tell us that Derinkuyu likely dates back thousands of years. The precise origin is uncertain. Some suggest it began as early as the 8th century BC, perhaps carved by the Phrygians, an ancient Anatolian people known for their skill in working soft volcanic stone. Later, Christians are thought to have expanded the tunnels, using them as sanctuaries from Roman persecution, and later still as protection against Arab raids during the Byzantine era. Throughout history, waves of people have retreated underground when the surface grew dangerous, and Derinkuyu offered more than safety. It offered the possibility of survival. But questions linger. How could such an immense and complex structure be excavated in ancient times without modern tools? The chambers are carefully ventilated by massive shafts that descend through the city, providing fresh air even at its lowest levels. In total, nearly 15,000 ventilation ducts ensure that tens of thousands could breathe underground. Wells tapped into groundwater kept the community alive, while clever stone doors, giant circular slabs weighing hundreds of pounds, could be rolled into place to seal off passages in times of attack. The engineering is not only sophisticated, but also deliberately defensive. Was this city the work of one culture, carefully planned from the start? Or was it gradually expanded, generation after generation, until it became the vast subterranean maze we see today? Some scholars argue for the latter, that the earliest inhabitants dug simple storage chambers or shelters, later enlarged into complex networks as threats increased. Others wonder whether the city was originally conceived as a grand project, its scale suggesting a level of organization and cooperation difficult to reconcile with what we know of early societies in the region. And then, there are the more speculative ideas, Some point out that Derinkuyu could house upwards of 20,000 to 30,000 people, not only for days but for months at a time. What could have driven entire populations to abandon the surface world and vanish into the earth? Traditional explanations point to war, persecution, or invasion, but some propose far more unusual causes. Was this a refuge from climate catastrophe, when ancient Anatolia may have faced periods of extreme drought or sudden cold? Was it a shelter from natural disasters, such as volcanic eruptions or relentless storms? Even more fringe theories suggest possibilities that border on the mythic. Could Derinkuyu have been built to survive something far larger than human conflict? Perhaps a cosmic event? Or even something hinted at in ancient myths? Cappadocia's legends tell of beings who lived beneath the ground, emerging only occasionally to interact with surface dwellers. Were these simply stories told to explain the existence of the tunnels, or echoes of a forgotten past? The sheer scale of the underground city raises further puzzles. To excavate such an enormous volume of rock, even over centuries, would have required not only labor but also planning on a monumental scale. The spoil, the tons of volcanic rock that had to be removed, has never been conclusively located. Where was it taken, and how was it transported? How did ancient builders ensure structural stability at such depth, preventing collapse as they carved vast halls and endless corridors? Walking through Derinkuyu today, one cannot help but feel the weight of time pressing down as much as the earth above. Narrow corridors suddenly open into vaulted chambers large enough to hold entire congregations. Niches cut into the walls reveal traces of domestic life: storage jars, places for lamps, troughs for animals. The human presence here is undeniable, yet the people themselves remain faceless, their voices lost in stone. There is also an eerie sense of silence in these passages, a silence broken only by the sound of one's own footsteps. It is easy to imagine families huddled together in these chambers, listening to the muffled sounds of war or danger above. Or perhaps, in more speculative visions, watching the world outside fall into chaos, while life continued underground in a fragile but enduring refuge. Historians tend to view Derinkuyu as an extraordinary example of human resilience and adaptability. It shows how ancient people responded to the dangers of their time, carving safety where none existed. Yet mysteries remain. No written records describe its construction. No culture claims it as their creation. It simply exists, silent, vast, and enigmatic. And so the questions persist. Was Derinkuyu a city built for war or for survival against something far greater? Was it the work of one civilization or the inheritance of many? And perhaps most intriguingly, what other secrets still lie buried beneath Cappadocia's soil, waiting to be uncovered? For now, Derinkuyu stands as one of humanity's greatest enigmas, a reminder that even in places we think we know, the Earth may still be hiding entire worlds. And as long as its origins remain uncertain, it will continue to invite us to wonder. What else did our ancestors know? And what have we yet to discover beneath our feet? High on the dusty plains of southeastern Turkey, surrounded by low hills and an unforgiving horizon, lies a site that has only recently begun to reveal its secrets. Karahan Tepe, once buried beneath layers of earth and time, now stands as one of the most enigmatic discoveries of the ancient world. To the untrained eye, it might appear as nothing more than weathered stone and scattered ruins. But closer inspection tells another story. Here, carved pillars rise from the bedrock, their surfaces etched with figures and motifs that echo a forgotten language of symbols. The silence of the place is heavy, as though the stones themselves are holding on to memories we cannot quite unlock. Archaeologists date Karahan Tepe to around 9,500 BC, making it one of the oldest monumental sites known to humanity. That is several millennia before the invention of the wheel, the rise of cities, or the development of writing. Like its more famous counterpart, Göbekli Tepe, located some 35 kilometers away, Karahan Tepe challenges the established narrative of human history. How could hunter-gatherer communities, traditionally believed to live simple, transient lives, create such elaborate architecture? The question lingers in every excavation trench and every newly uncovered carving. The layout of the site is striking. Excavations reveal oval and rectangular structures, some sunk into the ground, others carefully shaped from natural rock. Dozens of T-shaped pillars, stone monoliths reaching up to 16 feet tall, dot the site. Their surfaces bear reliefs of snakes, wild animals, and abstract symbols, their meaning still unknown. In one chamber, archaeologists discovered a striking feature: rows of phallic-shaped pillars arranged in a peculiar formation, leading to heated debates about ritual purpose. Another structure, dubbed the Special Building, contains a carved human head emerging from stone, its empty eyes staring into the void. What kind of ceremonies might have taken place here, in the flickering light of ancient fires, with shadows dancing across carved figures that no longer speak our language? The mainstream explanation is that Karahan Tepe, like Göbekli Tepe, was a ritual center, perhaps the earliest known temple complex in the world. It may have served as a place of gathering, ceremony, and myth, where communities came together not only to worship, but also to reinforce social bonds. Some scholars suggest that the labor required to construct such a site could have been the very force that pushed humanity toward agriculture. In gathering to build, carve, and sustain ritual life, early people may have found themselves needing a more permanent food supply. If true, then Karahan Tepe would not just be a mystery of stone. It would be a birthplace of civilization itself. Yet the mystery only deepens when one considers the sophistication of its design. The stones are not random or crude. They are carefully placed, aligned, and decorated, suggesting both advanced planning and symbolic intention. How did communities with no known metallurgy, no wheels, and no beasts of burden organize the movement and placement of such massive stones? Could they have known techniques that we no longer credit to societies of that time? Beyond conventional archaeology, other theories whisper at the edges of this debate. Some suggest that Karahan Tepe, with its astronomical alignments, could have been a kind of observatory, a place where the movements of the stars and seasons were tracked long before written calendars existed. Others point to its proximity to Göbekli Tepe, and propose that these sites may have formed part of a broader sacred landscape, a network of temples or ritual centers stretching across ancient Anatolia. Then there are the more speculative interpretations. Could the imagery carved into the stones, snakes, abstract shapes, strange humanoid figures, represent myths or cosmologies now entirely lost to us? Some fringe thinkers even suggest these carvings might depict not earthly animals, but beings of another kind, whether symbolic, mythical, or something more. The notion that such sites may preserve echoes of forgotten legends passed down for thousands of years leaves space for imagination as much as evidence. And one cannot ignore the most provocative question of all. Why here, and why then? The Fertile Crescent was indeed a cradle of human settlement, yet the sheer scale and complexity of Karahan Tepe seemed to leap centuries, even millennia, ahead of what we thought possible. Was there an unknown precursor civilization that left its mark in stone, then vanished without a trace? Or are we underestimating the ingenuity and organizational power of small, scattered hunter-gatherer groups? Walking through the partially excavated site today, the atmosphere is both haunting and magnetic. Wind sweeps across the barren landscape, carrying with it the faint echoes of rituals long forgotten. Each stone pillar, each carved relief, stands not merely as an artifact, but as a question. What did these people believe? What compelled them to labor with such intensity in a world where survival alone was no small feat? Even as excavations continue, many of Karahan Tepe's secrets remain sealed beneath the earth. New chambers and carvings are unearthed each season, hinting at an even larger complex than archaeologists first imagined. If Göbekli Tepe was once hailed as the world's first temple, Karahan Tepe now suggests it was part of something much greater, a cultural tradition stretching across millennia and landscapes. But the meaning of it all, the stories behind the symbols, the rituals once performed in the stone halls, remains beyond our grasp. In the end, Karahan Tepe invites us to question the very roots of our own story. Who built the first monuments of humanity, and why? Were they the architects of civilization, or merely its precursors? And perhaps more hauntingly, how much of what they knew has been lost to time, buried still beneath the soil, waiting for us to uncover? For now, the stones of Karahan Tepe stand in silence, their carved figures gazing into eternity, leaving us with more questions than answers. And as long as those questions remain, the mystery of this ancient site will continue to whisper across the winds of Anatolia, daring us to wonder what truths still lie hidden in the earth. High in the windswept Andean plateau, where the air is thin and the horizon seems endless, lie the ruins of Puma Punku. At first glance, the site may appear to be nothing more than scattered blocks of stone, giant remnants of a long-forgotten civilization. But to those who look closer, these stones reveal a story unlike any other, a story written not in words, but in angles, cuts, and impossible precision. Here, in modern-day Bolivia, not far from Lake Titicaca, massive stone blocks rest silently upon the earth. Some weigh more than 100 tons, yet they are shaped with an exactness that defies simple explanation. The most striking among them are the famous H-blocks, rectangular stones carved with complex notches and grooves, their edges so straight and clean they seem as though they were machined rather than chiseled by hand. Scattered across the site, they once formed part of a larger complex, perhaps a gateway or ceremonial center. Today, they lie toppled and broken, as if some immense force tore apart the work of ancient builders. Archaeologists date Puma Punku to around 500 AD, placing it within the great Tiwanaku culture that flourished in this region long before the rise of the Inca. The Tiwanaku people are believed to have been skilled engineers, capable of building monumental architecture that reflected both religious and political power. Puma Punku may have been one of their most sacred sites, a ceremonial gateway into a spiritual world, a place where stone, sky, and belief converged. Yet even within this framework, mysteries abound. How did the builders, working at nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, transport and position stones of such extraordinary weight? Some of the red sandstone blocks were quarried nearly 10 miles away, while the distinctive andesite stones are believed to have come from the Copacabana Peninsula across Lake Titicaca itself. Without wheels, draft animals, or iron tools, how could such feats of transport and shaping have been achieved? Mainstream theories propose that the Tiwanaku used large labor forces, ropes, sledges, and ramps, slowly moving these immense stones across land and water. Stone hammers may have been employed to carve the intricate shapes, with hours upon hours of painstaking labor resulting in the precise cuts that still astound us today. It is, without doubt, an extraordinary testament to human determination and ingenuity. But for some, the explanations leave gaps. The precision of the cuts, sharp right angles, symmetrical notches, interlocking designs, appears advanced, even by modern standards. Some blocks seem to fit together like pieces of a giant puzzle, suggesting that the builders had not only great skill, but also an understanding of geometry and measurement far beyond what we usually attribute to societies of that time. Were these techniques developed independently, or do they hint at a knowledge passed down from sources we no longer recognize? As with many ancient mysteries, speculation begins where certainty ends. Alternative theories suggest that Punku may be far older than the Tiwanaku themselves, perhaps built upon the ruins of an earlier, unknown civilization whose knowledge was later inherited and repurposed. Some point to erosion patterns and the weathering of stone as evidence that these structures could predate the official timeline by thousands of years. If true, Punku might belong to a chapter of human history we have yet to uncover. Others have ventured even further into the realm of possibility. Could Punku have served as an astronomical observatory, aligned with the heavens to track solstices and celestial events? Were the stones arranged to symbolize myths, cosmologies, or even maps of the stars? And in more speculative thought, did the precision suggest technologies lost to time, or even influence from beyond our known world? These questions are rarely treated as definitive, yet they persist because the stones themselves invite them. Their silence is not empty, but suggestive. Walking among the ruins today, the visitor is struck not only by the sheer scale of the stones, but also by their unfinished beauty. Some blocks appear abandoned mid-carving, as though the work was suddenly halted. Others lie toppled and fractured, hinting at an ancient catastrophe, perhaps an earthquake, perhaps conflict, or perhaps something else entirely. Did the builders fall victim to forces of nature, or was there another reason the site was left incomplete? The atmosphere at Punku is unlike that of other archaeological sites. The vast plain around it stretches outward, with mountains standing like sentinels in the distance. Against this backdrop, the stones appear almost otherworldly, as though they were placed here not just as part of human effort, but as markers of something larger, something meant to last beyond the civilizations that rise and fall on the surface of the earth. For archaeologists, Punku is a puzzle piece in the larger story of the Tiwanaku culture and its influence across the Andes. For others, it is a riddle carved in stone, a reminder that human history is not always as straightforward as it seems. The gateway, if that is what it once was, now stands broken. But its mystery remains whole. And so we are left to wonder, who truly carved these blocks, and with what knowledge? Was Punku a sacred center of ritual life, a cosmic observatory, or the remnant of an even more ancient civilization? Or is it perhaps all of these things at once, an inheritance from a past that continues to resist explanation? As the winds sweep across the high plateau and the stones of Punku cast long shadows in the setting sun, the question lingers in silence. What truths do these stones still hold? And will we ever be able to read them? Beneath the sands of Upper Egypt, hidden at the rear of the grand temple of Seti I at Abydos, lies a structure unlike any other in the ancient landscape. To reach it, one descends below the level of the desert, into a space where colossal granite pillars rise from a floor often submerged in groundwater. This is the Osireion, a monument whose very existence has puzzled archaeologists for more than a century. Massive stone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, stand in stark contrast to the delicate reliefs and inscriptions of the adjoining temple. Here, simplicity replaces ornamentation. Cyclopean walls and megalithic construction suggest something primal, something older, as though the Osireion belongs to another chapter of history entirely. Mainstream archaeology attributes the structure to the reign of Seti I, around the 13th century BC. It is thought to have been built as a cenotaph dedicated to Osiris, the god of the underworld, and a symbolic tomb intended to connect pharaohs with the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The position of the Osireion, literally at the back of Seti's temple, supports this idea, reflecting the role of Osiris as guardian of the afterlife. The association with water, flooding its chambers even today, further reinforces symbolic ties to the Nile, fertility, and resurrection. And yet, the Osireion does not resemble any known construction of its period. Whereas Seti's temple above is adorned with intricate hieroglyphs, detailed reliefs, and fine sandstone masonry, the Osireion is starkly different. Its walls formed from gigantic, rough-hewn granite blocks fitted together in a style more reminiscent of megalithic sites far from Egypt. Scholars note its resemblance to constructions at Giza, or even sites in Peru, where immense stones interlock with uncanny precision. Why would Seti commission a monument so stylistically out of place with the traditions of his own time? Was this a deliberate return to an archaic style, meant to evoke timelessness and antiquity? Or is it possible the Osireion was already ancient when Seti built his temple above it, and he merely incorporated it into his own sacred complex? The question of age remains one of the Osireion's greatest mysteries. Traditional scholarship firmly situates it in Seti's reign, citing inscriptions from his temple that reference the structure. But other researchers have argued that the megalithic construction hints at something older, perhaps thousands of years older, preserved and reused by later dynasties. If true, the Osireion might represent a relic of a forgotten epoch, a chapter of Egyptian history erased from conventional timelines. Could it belong to a civilization predating dynastic Egypt, one with knowledge and capabilities we have yet to fully recognize? Adding to the intrigue is the so-called flower of life pattern etched into one of the granite pillars, visible only faintly today. This design, formed from overlapping circles, appears across cultures and time periods, often associated with sacred geometry. Some claim it to be a modern addition, perhaps carved by visitors centuries later. Others believe it may represent a continuity of symbolic knowledge stretching back into prehistory. If authentic to the Osireion's origins, what meaning might it have held for the builders? Was it a symbol of creation, a cosmic blueprint, or something else entirely? The function of the Osireion is equally enigmatic. Was it truly a cenotaph, a symbolic tomb to honor Osiris and the pharaoh's eternal connection to him? The central hall, with its water-filled basin surrounded by massive pillars, could suggest ritual use, perhaps initiations, funerary rites, or ceremonies linked to rebirth. Some have speculated it was designed as a kind of subterranean temple of mysteries, where priests enacted rituals hidden from the eyes of ordinary worshippers. The constant presence of water adds another dimension. Was this intentional, symbolizing the primordial waters from which creation emerged? Or was the flooding simply a consequence of the high water table in Abydos? Then there are the more speculative ideas. Certain fringe theorists have proposed that the Osireion is not only older, but also linked to a forgotten advanced civilization. They point to its megalithic style, its enigmatic geometry, and its stark departure from typical Egyptian design as evidence of a knowledge long lost. Others suggest it may have served as a kind of energy temple, its granite and water features designed to harness natural forces we no longer understand. While such claims remain outside mainstream archaeology, they persist because the Osireion itself offers so little clarity. Its stones are mute, its inscriptions sparse, its history elusive. Even standing within the chamber today, the mystery is palpable. The walls, smooth and imposing, rise like guardians around the flooded floor. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of damp stone. Looking up, one sees only the sky framed through the rectangular opening above. a shaft of light piercing the gloom. It is easy to imagine priests descending into this sacred place, bearing torches, their flickering light reflecting across the water. What secrets did they guard here? What stories did these walls once hear? For archaeologists, the Osireion is both a puzzle and a provocation. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about continuity, memory, and the limits of what we know about ancient Egypt. If Seti built it, why does it look nothing like his other works? If he inherited it, who were its original builders? And how much earlier does its story begin? And what might still lie hidden beneath the sands, waiting to reshape our understanding of the past? The Osireion endures as a monument to mystery. Its purpose is uncertain, its origin debated, its meaning clouded by time. And yet, it continues to draw us in, compelling us to wonder not only about what we see, but about what we cannot. As the waters rise and fall within its halls, one truth remains. The Osireion has not yet given up its secrets. And perhaps, beneath the sands of Abydos, Egypt still guards a chapter of history the world is not ready to read. Carved deep into the volcanic basalt cliffs of western India, the Kailasa temple at Ellora rises not as a structure built stone by stone, but as a monolith carved whole from the living rock. Standing before it, one is struck not only by its size, but by the staggering audacity of its creation. Towering pillars, intricately detailed sculptures, and massive courtyards, all of it hewn downward from the top of the cliff, as though the builders were peeling away the mountain itself to reveal a hidden temple buried within. The scale of this achievement is almost beyond comprehension. Measuring over 100 feet high and covering an area twice the size of the Parthenon in Athens, the Kailasa temple is widely regarded as the largest rock-cut monument in the world. Archaeologists attribute its construction to the Rashtrakuta dynasty in the 8th century AD, during the reign of King Krishna I, who is said to have commissioned it in devotion to Lord Shiva. Historical records suggest that tens of thousands of tons of solid rock were painstakingly removed to shape the temple, all without the benefit of modern machinery. Conventional estimates claim that over 200,000 tons of basalt were excavated using chisels, hammers, and primitive tools. Yet here lies the first great puzzle. If completed within the reign of a single monarch, as some inscriptions suggest, the construction would have required a pace of excavation and carving almost unimaginable. Could artisans of the 8th century, no matter how skilled, have removed such a vast quantity of stone so quickly? Was the temple truly carved in little more than 2 decades, or was it instead a project spanning generations, perhaps centuries, with layers of labor now compressed by legend into a single ruler's name? Walking through the temple grounds, the craftsmanship is astonishing. Gigantic elephants, carved from the same stone as the walls that surround them, appear to hold up the weight of the temple itself. Pillars rise in perfect symmetry, their surfaces alive with depictions of gods, demons, and mythological battles. Shrines and chambers extend in every direction, each adorned with intricate reliefs. How could such delicate artistry emerge from tools striking basalt, one chisel mark at a time? Mainstream historians regard the temple as the pinnacle of Indian rock-cut architecture, a product of skill, devotion, and determination. Yet the mystery remains in its execution. The top-down excavation method, beginning from the mountain's summit and carving downward, is rarely seen on such a monumental scale. Was this a technique born purely of necessity, or does it hint at a construction method whose full logic we still do not fully understand? The questions deepen when one considers the logistics. Where was the enormous volume of excavated rock transported? No records mention such a massive displacement, and no clear spoil heaps have been identified. If hundreds of thousands of tons of stone were removed, where did it all go? Was it used to construct other parts of Ellora's 34 cave complexes? Or was it somehow hidden, eroded, or absorbed into projects we no longer connect with Kailasa? Beyond the accepted history, more speculative ideas take root. Some suggest that the Kailasa temple may not have been carved within the relatively short time frame traditionally assigned to it. Instead, it may represent a far older structure, later adopted, expanded, and rededicated by the Rashtrakutas. Others question whether the sophistication of its design, its precise alignments, its balance of massive scale and fine detail, suggests lost techniques or knowledge passed down from an earlier epoch. Even more speculative theories propose that the temple's design reflects cosmic principles, a sacred geometry meant not only to honor deities, but also to embody the structure of the universe itself. Was the Kailasa temple a place of worship alone, or was it also a symbolic model of creation, encoded in stone? Some fringe interpretations even whisper of technologies lost to time, wondering aloud whether the pace and precision of its excavation could hint at methods we do not recognize in the archaeological record. Standing within its courtyards, one cannot help but feel the weight of both history and enigma pressing down. The towering Shikara, or temple tower, rises into the sky, while the sun casts shifting shadows across walls crowded with figures. Each carving tells a story from Hindu mythology, epic battles from the Ramayana and Mahabharata, scenes of gods in celestial realms. These are not rough outlines, but refined works of art, suggesting not just mass labor, but masterful vision. Who were the artisans who brought this vision to life, and how were they organized on such a monumental scale? The temple is also striking in what it withholds. Unlike structures assembled block by block, Kailasa offers no joints, no seams, no blueprints left behind in stone. It exists as a single, seamless monument, its origin concealed within the very mountain from which it was freed. It is a creation as much revealed as built, as though the temple had always been there, waiting for human hands to carve away the layers of rock and bring it into the light. Today, scholars continue to study the Kailasa temple not only for its religious and artistic significance, but also for the profound questions it raises about human ability, ambition, and memory. Did a single king truly commission such a staggering project? Or do the stones hold the story of many generations, their voices compressed into silence by time? Was the temple a singular feat of devotion and labor, or a fragment of a much older tradition now hidden beneath centuries of history? The answers remain elusive. The temple itself speaks in the language of stone, grand, silent, and enduring, leaving us to interpret what is missing as much as what remains. And so, as the sun sets over Ellora and the basalt cliffs cast long shadows across the carvings, one cannot help but wonder, does the Kailasa temple represent the limits of human perseverance, or a glimpse into something far more ancient and far more mysterious than we yet understand? In the rugged highlands of northern Ethiopia, where the landscape is cut by valleys and ridges, a quiet town conceals one of the world's most astonishing architectural feats. At first glance, Lalibela may seem like any other hillside settlement, but as you approach its center, the ground itself opens to reveal an extraordinary sight. Entire churches, carved not upward toward the sky, but downward into the earth. Hewn directly from solid volcanic rock, these sanctuaries appear as if they were sculpted by giants, their walls, windows, and arches emerging from a single mass of stone. The most iconic among them, the Church of St. George, lies hidden within a trench, its roof at ground level, shaped unmistakably in the form of a cross. To enter, visitors descend narrow passageways, almost like tunnels, until they stand at the base of towering walls. Here, the church rises from the living rock, its details, columns, doorways, and finely carved windows, still bearing the marks of the chisels that shaped them centuries ago. The effect is disorienting. The structure is both a building and the earth itself, inseparable from the bedrock from which it was born. Tradition holds that these 11 monolithic churches were commissioned in the 12th and 13th centuries by King Lalibela of the Zagwe dynasty. Historical records describe the king's vision of creating a new Jerusalem in Africa, a holy city that would serve as a pilgrimage site for Christians unable to reach Palestine. The churches were intended to symbolize biblical landmarks, with their arrangement forming a kind of sacred topography. Even today, pilgrims walk these trenches in white robes, chanting prayers as they pass from one subterranean sanctuary to another. Yet the scale of Lalibela's achievement raises questions that history has yet to answer. How could an entire complex of monumental churches, each carved from the top down with extraordinary precision, be completed within the reign of a single king? To hollow out a single church from solid basalt would be a formidable challenge, demanding not only artistry but also logistics, excavation of stone, planning of interior spaces, and detailed carving of decorative features. Multiply that by 11, and the task borders on the impossible. Mainstream explanations suggest that vast teams of workers, perhaps thousands strong, labored for decades under royal command. Simple tools of iron and wood may have been used to chip away the volcanic tuff, a rock somewhat softer than granite, though still demanding immense effort. Some scholars argue that the construction could have taken more than a century, extending beyond King Lalibela's lifetime, though Ethiopian tradition insists it was his singular vision and his rule that brought the project to completion. But beyond these practical questions lie deeper mysteries. Why rock-cut architecture? Why carve downward into the earth when above-ground construction would have been easier? Was this choice purely symbolic, reflecting humility, permanence, and a desire to create sanctuaries inseparable from the land? Or was there a more practical reason? Protection from invaders, concealment from hostile forces, insulation from heat, or even a continuation of a much older tradition of subterranean construction? Speculation has only grown with the site's enduring silence. Local legends claim that the churches were not built by human hands alone. According to one story, angels worked alongside men, completing at night what workers had begun during the day, allowing the entire complex to be finished in a matter of years rather than centuries. While symbolic in nature, the tale reflects the sense of awe the site inspires, so overwhelming that human effort alone seems inadequate to explain it. Some researchers have pointed to architectural parallels far beyond Ethiopia, noting similarities with earlier rock-hewn traditions in Egypt, Jordan, and even India. Could Lalibela's builders have been influenced by ideas or techniques that traveled great distances, carried by traders or pilgrims along ancient routes? Or do these similarities suggest something else, that rock-cut sanctuaries were part of a shared global impulse, born from a vision of permanence and the sacred that transcended cultures? Others turn to more speculative interpretations. Was Lalibela's complex truly a creation of the 12th century? Or could it be built upon an older foundation, a site of worship that predates the Zagwe dynasty and was later expanded or repurposed? The lack of extensive inscriptions or detailed records leaves room for such questions. Some fringe theories even propose that the precision and sheer volume of excavation hint at lost knowledge or forgotten methods, techniques that allowed ancient builders to carve stone on a scale we still struggle to comprehend. Walking the site today, the atmosphere is unlike any other. Narrow trenches link the churches, creating a labyrinth of pathways that echo with footsteps and prayers. Within the dim interiors, lit by small windows and flickering lamps, the air is thick with incense and song. The walls themselves seem alive with history, as though they carry the weight of centuries of devotion. And yet, beneath the reverence, the enigma remains. Who first envisioned this city of stone? How, with the tools and time available, was it carved to such scale and precision? Even UNESCO's designation of Lalibela as a World Heritage Site has not answered these questions. Instead, the recognition only amplifies the paradox. The churches are celebrated as masterpieces of human devotion and ingenuity, but their creation continues to defy the logic of their time. Were they solely the product of faith and determination? Or do they hint at deeper connections, cultural, historical, or even technological, that we have yet to uncover? As the sun sets over the Ethiopian highlands, shadows lengthen across the trenches, and the carved cross of St. George is slowly swallowed by dusk. The chants of pilgrims fade into silence, leaving only the stillness of stone. And in that stillness, the question lingers. Are the Lalibela churches a triumph of medieval devotion alone, or the visible trace of a mystery stretching far deeper into the past? High above the ancient city of Cusco, in the Peruvian Andes, lies a fortress of stone that seems to defy both time and explanation. The walls of Sacsayhuamán rise in massive terraces, their stones locked together with a precision so exact that not even a blade of grass can slip between them. Standing before these colossal blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, one is struck by the almost playful complexity of their arrangement. Polygonal shapes, cut into irregular angles, fit seamlessly into one another as if molded like clay. Yet these walls are not clay, but hard andesite and limestone, carved, transported, and placed by hands working centuries ago. Mainstream archaeology attributes Sacsayhuamán to the Inca Empire, most likely constructed during the reign of Pachacuti in the 15th century AD. The site was a ceremonial and military complex, a place of both defense and ritual, overlooking the Inca capital with commanding views. Chroniclers describe how thousands of workers toiled to quarry, move, and shape the stones, using ropes, ramps, and sheer human strength to accomplish what seems impossible by modern standards. But questions persist. How did the Incas, who had no wheels, no iron tools, and no draft animals, manage to shape and transport such immense stones with such remarkable precision? The tight-fitting joints are not only visually stunning but also practical. They have allowed the walls to withstand centuries of earthquakes that have toppled other structures nearby. Was this simply the result of patient craftsmanship, trial and error perfected over generations? Or does it hint at techniques we no longer fully understand? Walking along the zigzagging lines of Sacsayhuamán's walls, the stones themselves seem to defy explanation. Some blocks are cut into as many as a dozen angles, interlocking with neighbors in a puzzle-like fashion. The effort to carve such complex shapes, rather than using simpler rectangular blocks, raises a natural question. Why? Was it purely for structural stability, a design born out of necessity to withstand seismic forces? Or did the form carry symbolic meaning, reflecting cosmology or myth embedded in the stonework? The mainstream view emphasizes the ingenuity of the Inca builders, suggesting that through the use of stone hammers, sand abrasion, and persistence, they achieved results that continue to awe us today. But other interpretations, both academic and speculative, take the discussion further. Some researchers argue that the scale of Sacsayhuamán suggests that portions of the site may predate the Inca themselves. They point to the possibility that the Incas inherited and expanded upon an earlier foundation, a construction legacy passed down from a culture older and perhaps more skilled in megalithic engineering than the empire that claimed it. Such ideas are fueled by the contrast in construction styles. While the massive polygonal blocks at the base show a degree of precision and monumentality, higher levels of the walls often employ smaller, more regular stones, less tightly fitted. Could this indicate different phases of building, carried out by different peoples at different times? If so, who were the original masons, And what knowledge did they possess that later cultures struggled to replicate? Speculative theories venture even further. Some propose that the stones may have been softened or treated by unknown chemical means, allowing them to be shaped as though they were pliable. Others suggest advanced surveying or levitation methods, ideas that move beyond the boundaries of conventional history, but linger because the stones themselves offer no clear answers. The sheer audacity of the site keeps the imagination alive. Equally mysterious is the purpose of Sacsayhuamán. Archaeologists generally view it as a fortress, given its strategic location and defensive layout. Yet many also see it as a ceremonial center, tied to the sun cult and Inca cosmology. Some believe the zigzagging walls represent the teeth of a puma, an animal sacred to the Incas and symbolically linked to the city of Cusco itself, which was said to have been laid out in the shape of this powerful creature. If true, Sacsayhuamán was not only a stronghold, but also a symbolic heart of the empire, a living embodiment of myth carved into stone. Still, the unanswered questions linger. Was Sacsayhuamán entirely an Inca creation, or did the empire inherit a foundation much older than itself? Why carve such complex stone shapes when simpler forms would have sufficed? And most perplexing of all, how did ancient builders, with the tools available to them, achieve a level of stonework that remains difficult to replicate even with modern equipment? Today, visitors walk through the terraces, touching stones polished by centuries of wind and rain, marveling at the endurance of walls that have stood through countless earthquakes. The ruins invite both admiration and reflection. They remind us of the Incas' brilliance, but also of the limits of our own understanding. As the sun sets over the Andes and long shadows creep across the stone, the mystery of Sacsayhuamán endures. Are these walls simply the pinnacle of Inca engineering, or the visible remnant of something far older, preserved in stone? The answer, for now, remains buried in silence, leaving us to wonder what truths the Andes still keep hidden. South of Lake Titicaca, in the windswept plains of southern Peru, a solitary wall of stone rises from the rugged landscape. At first sight, it appears unremarkable, just another weathered outcrop of red granite among the rolling hills. But upon closer approach, something else reveals itself. A perfectly carved doorway, cut into the rock face, standing nearly 20 feet tall. Its frame is rectangular, its surface flat, its lines unnaturally straight in contrast to the rough, natural stone around it. At its center lies a smaller niche, like a doorway within a doorway, leading not into a passage or chamber, but into solid stone. This is the mysterious Amaru Muru Gate, also known as the Gate of the Gods. Unlike the monumental ruins of Cusco or Machu Picchu, Amaru Muru is not a city or fortress. It is, instead, a portal, an opening that leads nowhere. There are no chambers behind it, no hidden rooms to explore. The doorway is carved into a sheer rock wall, perfectly smooth and symmetrical, yet seemingly unfinished or abandoned. Mainstream archaeology considers it a carved niche, perhaps an incomplete project of the pre-Inca peoples who once inhabited the region. Its origin is uncertain, its builders unknown, its purpose unexplained. And yet, it is precisely this absence of context that makes Amaru Muru so compelling. Why carve a doorway that leads to nothing? What symbolism was intended in shaping such a structure? Was it meant as a ritual site, a symbolic portal between the earthly and the divine? Or was it part of something far greater, long since lost to time? Local legends provide their own answers. According to one story, a priest of the Inca, fleeing the Spanish conquest, arrived at Amaru Muru carrying a sacred golden disc said to have fallen from the heavens. Guided by shamanic knowledge, he placed the disc into the smaller niche at the center of the doorway, whereupon the stone glowed with light, Passing through, the priest disappeared into another world, never to be seen again. Such tales have fueled centuries of speculation, casting Amaru Muru as more than just a rock carving, but a literal stargate, a portal to realms beyond our own. While archaeology offers more grounded explanations, the mystery endures. Some researchers suggest the site may have been a ceremonial altar where offerings were placed into the central niche. Others believe it may have been connected to solar alignments, its placement in the landscape marking astronomical events significant to ancient cultures. Still others argue that it was part of a larger complex now erased by time, perhaps foundations of temples or settlements that once stood in the area but were destroyed, leaving only this enigmatic doorway behind. The precision of the carving itself is striking. The lines are sharp, the surface is smooth, as though the stone was cut with tools more advanced than those typically attributed to pre-Columbian societies. And while the Incas were master stonemasons, their style often involved fitted blocks and polygonal walls, not singular, monolithic carvings like this. Does Amaru Muru represent a local experiment, a different school of stoneworking that we rarely see? Or is it a relic of a tradition even older than the Incas, a trace of a civilization whose techniques and meanings are now lost? Speculative theories abound. Some propose that the doorway was designed as a symbolic threshold between worlds, used in rituals of death and rebirth. The smaller niche at its center may have represented the passage of the soul into another realm, a place where shamans or priests performed ceremonies meant to connect the physical and spiritual. Others stretch the mystery further, suggesting that Amaru Muru may once have been part of a network of ancient sites across Peru and Bolivia, aligned with each other in ways we do not yet fully grasp. Sites that some claim to be remnants of a much older, advanced culture predating known history. Even more fringe interpretations imagine the gateway as an actual device, an entrance to parallel worlds or dimensions, its legends of glowing light and disappearance pointing to technologies beyond our understanding. While such ideas step outside the boundaries of conventional scholarship, they persist because the site offers so little evidence to counter them. With no inscriptions, no artifacts, and no definitive context, Amaru Muru remains a blank slate upon which both history and imagination are projected. Standing before the gate today, the atmosphere is haunting. The air is thin, the wind sharp, the red stone glowing in the highland sun. Visitors often describe a strange stillness here, a sense of presence, as though the site is more than just stone. Pilgrims still travel to the gate, leaving offerings, meditating or performing rituals. Some claim to feel vibrations when touching the stone. Others speak of visions or altered states of consciousness. Is this simply the power of suggestion, born of centuries of legend? Or does the site truly hold an energy we have yet to measure or understand? What is undeniable is the enigma carved into this solitary wall. Amaru Muru is neither a temple nor a fortress. It offers no rooms to explore, no treasures to uncover. It is a doorway that leads nowhere, and yet it continues to draw seekers from around the world. Why carve such a feature in the first place, if not to mark something sacred, something vital to the culture that created it? Perhaps Amaru Muru was a forgotten shrine. Perhaps it was a boundary marker in stone, a symbolic passage into the world of spirits. Or perhaps, as the legends suggest, it was something even greater, a threshold to the unknown, carved by hands that believed the stone itself could open to the mysteries of the cosmos. And so, the silent doorway stands, gazing out across the Peruvian highlands, its purpose unspoken, its secrets intact. Was it a relic of ritual, a symbol of faith, a fragment of a lost civilization, or a passageway to something beyond our world? the answer remains hidden in the stillness of stone, inviting us to wonder what truths might yet lie beyond the gate. High in the Andes of central Peru, at an altitude of nearly 12,500 feet, a vast plateau stretches toward the sky. Known as Marcahuasi, it is a place of haunting silence and raw beauty. Wind-swept grasslands, rolling rock formations, and a horizon that seems to dissolve into the clouds. But scattered across this barren tableland are shapes that have puzzled explorers, archaeologists, and travelers for generations. Massive stones rise in curious forms, faces, animals, and figures that seem to watch over the land with a silent, timeless gaze. At first glance, one might dismiss them as tricks of erosion, sculpted by wind and rain over millennia. And indeed, many geologists argue that natural weathering alone could explain their forms. Yet some of these rock shapes are so eerily precise, so suggestive of human or animal features, that one is left to wonder whether they were deliberately carved. Among the most famous are the so-called Monument to Humanity, a towering stone face that appears to gaze solemnly into the distance, and the African Queen, a rock formation resembling a regal profile complete with headdress. Other stones seem to depict animals, seals, turtles, llamas, while still others suggest more abstract shapes, as though holding a meaning long forgotten. The debate over Marcahuasi centers not only on whether these forms are natural or artificial, but also on the tantalizing possibility that they could be remnants of an ancient civilization lost to time. Mainstream archaeology acknowledges that the plateau was occupied in pre-Columbian times. The area bears traces of stone ruins, tombs, and terraced structures, likely linked to the Yunga and later Inca peoples who lived in the region. But the carved-like formations, if they are not simply natural, do not neatly fit into this context. No inscriptions, no clear cultural markers, no tools or artifacts have been found to definitively tie the great stone figures to a known society. This absence of evidence has fueled speculation. Some researchers have suggested that Marcahuasi could be far older than Inca history, perhaps dating back thousands of years, built or shaped by a forgotten people. Others have argued that the plateau may have served as a kind of sanctuary or sacred landscape, its stones deliberately altered to embody mythological beings or cosmic principles. Could the giant faces have been intended as guardians? Could the animals have represented constellations or spirits? Adding to the mystery is the plateau's peculiar atmosphere. Visitors often report sensations of stillness, strangeness, even altered perception when walking among the stone forms. Legends among local communities speak of Marcahuasi as a place of great spiritual power, where shamans could connect with other realms. In the 20th century, explorers such as Daniel Russo popularized the idea that the plateau was a stone book, its figures a message left behind by an advanced prehistoric culture, perhaps even survivors of a global cataclysm. While such theories are outside the boundaries of mainstream archaeology, they endure precisely because Marcahuasi itself offers no definitive answers. Could it be that erosion and geology alone created these uncanny shapes? Certainly, nature has produced remarkable stone formations across the world, cliffs that resemble faces, mountains shaped like animals. But what makes Marcahuasi different is the sheer concentration of such forms in one place, many of them aligned or grouped in ways that appear intentional. Is this merely coincidence, a matter of human imagination seeking patterns where none exist? Or is there truly something more here, an ancient hand guiding the stone into meaning? Some speculate that Marcahuasi may have been used as an astronomical observatory. Certain stones appear aligned with celestial events, their shadows shifting in ways that may have marked solstices or equinoxes. If true, then the plateau could have functioned as a kind of open-air calendar, a sacred place where sky and stone met in ritual. Others take this idea further, proposing that Marcahuasi is part of a larger network of ancient sites in the Andes, connected through alignments, myths, and spiritual traditions. A network that hints at a deep and complex cultural landscape stretching back into prehistory. Yet, for all these theories, evidence remains elusive. No definitive carvings have been proven to be artificial beyond doubt. No clear archaeological record ties the great stone faces to a specific culture or period. The mystery lies in the ambiguity itself, the way the rocks stand at the boundary between nature and art, accident and design, leaving us to question our own perceptions. Walking the plateau at dusk, the experience is profound. As the sun sinks low, the stone faces seem to shift, their features more pronounced in shadow. The monument to humanity takes on a stern, almost mournful expression, as though it carries a memory too ancient for us to recall. The wind whips across the highland grass, and for a moment it feels as though the plateau itself is alive, its figures watching, waiting. Is Marcahuasi a gallery sculpted by nature alone, an extraordinary coincidence of geology and imagination? Or is it a legacy deliberately left behind, a silent record of a people we no longer remember? The truth remains hidden in the stones, unresolved, a puzzle written in granite across the sky-high plains of Peru. And as long as those forms stand, the question will endure. What do the rocks of Marcahuasi truly reveal, and what secrets are they still keeping? Tucked high in the eastern slopes of the Peruvian Andes, at the meeting place of mountain valleys and jungle rivers, lies an ancient complex that feels both familiar and alien. Chavín de Huántar, once the center of a powerful pre-Inca culture, greets visitors with its monumental stone temples, intricate plazas, and a maze of underground passageways. From the outside, it resembles a fortress, heavy with tiered terraces and massive retaining walls. But step inside, and you enter a different world, one of shadowed corridors, echoing chambers, and carvings that seem to belong as much to myth as to history. Dating back to around 1200 BC, Chavín de Huántar is one of the oldest and most influential ceremonial centers in South America. Archaeologists identify it as the heart of the Chavín culture, a civilization that spread its religious and artistic influence far across the Andes. The site's architecture speaks to its role as a spiritual hub. Plazas designed for gatherings, temples built for rituals, and galleries that lead into the darkness, where only initiates may have ventured. At its core, buried within the labyrinth, stands the Lanzón, a 15-foot granite monolith carved with the fearsome image of a fanged deity, half human, half animal, eyes wide, hair flowing like serpents. This central figure, hidden away in a chamber deep underground, suggests that the heart of Chavín worship lay not in sunlight, but in secrecy. The underground galleries themselves are among the site's most intriguing features. Narrow passageways twist and turn, leading into rooms where sound echoes strangely, and shafts of light penetrate only in carefully placed intervals. Some scholars believe these corridors were designed to disorient, to immerse participants in ritual experiences that blurred the boundaries of reality. Sound played a central role. Stone ducts and canals carved into the temples once carried rushing water, creating thunderous roars that reverberated through the chambers. Add to this the deep blasts of conch shell trumpets, several of which have been found at the site, and one can imagine the overwhelming sensory experience of ceremonies held here. What purpose did these rituals serve? Mainstream interpretations suggest that Chavín priests used architecture, sound, and imagery to reinforce their authority. By controlling these sensory experiences, they could convince initiates of their supernatural power, binding communities together under a shared religious vision. But some aspects defy simple explanation. Why was the Lanzon deity hidden away, accessible only through narrow corridors, when monumental statues elsewhere in the Andes were placed in open plazas? Why design galleries that amplify sound in unnatural ways? Were these features intended merely to impress or to induce altered states of consciousness? Adding to the mystery are the site's extraordinary carvings and motifs. Throughout Chavín de Huántar, images of jaguars, caimans, snakes, and raptors appear, creatures of power, transformation, and the liminal spaces between worlds. Some figures blend human and animal traits, their forms twisting in a style that seems deliberately ambiguous, as if to evoke shifting states of being. Were these depictions symbolic, mythological, or perhaps illustrative of shamanic journeys into realms beyond the physical? Speculative theories reach even further. Some researchers propose that the underground galleries were not merely ritual spaces, but designed as a kind of initiation labyrinth, where chosen individuals underwent profound transformations, both psychological and spiritual. Others suggest the architecture was aligned to astronomical events, turning the site into a cosmic stage that connected worshippers not just to their gods, but to the heavens themselves. And then there are the more fringe interpretations, whispered on the edges of archaeology. Could Chavín de Huántar have preserved knowledge of a far older tradition, passed down from a civilization predating the Andes as we know them? The precision of the stonework, the complexity of the water canals, and the enigmatic underground galleries have led some to wonder whether the site represents more than just the rise of one culture. It could be a fragment of a deeper, lost heritage. Standing at the site today, the sense of mystery is unmistakable. The main temple looms with an austere power, its weathered stones still bearing carved heads with fierce, otherworldly expressions. The plazas lie quiet, but their size hints at gatherings that once filled them with chants, music, and ritual. Descend into the galleries, and the world shifts. The air grows cooler, the sound of footsteps magnifies, and the sense of orientation slips away. For a moment, one can almost feel the presence of the priests who once guided initiates through this labyrinth, leading them not into open worship but into darkness, disorientation, and awe. Why build such a place, and why in this way? Was Chavín de Huántar simply a ceremonial center designed to unify people under a powerful religious order? Or was it something more, an attempt to manipulate human perception, to open doors to altered states, or perhaps even to realms that lay beyond the ordinary world? The answers remain elusive. What is clear is that Chavín de Huántar was more than stone and ritual. It was an experience, carefully engineered to shape belief, perception, and power. And as long as its labyrinths remain echoing with silence, we are left with the same haunting question. What truths were its builders trying to conceal, and what secrets might still be hidden in the shadows of the galleries? Amid the granite hills of southeastern Zimbabwe, scattered across a vast landscape of savanna and stone, lie the remains of a city whose scale and sophistication astonish all who see it. Known today as Great Zimbabwe, this sprawling ruin of walls, towers, and enclosures once served as the heart of a powerful kingdom. From the 11th to the 15th centuries, it flourished as a political and economic center, home to tens of thousands of people and a hub of trade that reached as far as China and the Middle East. Yet, for all that is known, much about its origins, construction, and ultimate decline remains shrouded in mystery. The most striking feature of Great Zimbabwe is its architecture. Rising from the earth are vast stone walls, some extending more than 30 feet high and over 800 feet in circumference, built without mortar, their granite blocks stacked with astonishing precision. The great enclosure, with its iconic conical tower, dominates the site. Its purpose has never been fully explained. Was it a granary, a symbol of authority, or a ritual structure tied to fertility and the cycles of the land? The absence of clear answers invites speculation, as the tower stands mute, a stone sentinel whose meaning has been lost to time. The builders of Great Zimbabwe were undoubtedly skilled. The granite was quarried locally, shaped by heating and splitting, then carefully fitted into massive walls that still stand after centuries of weather and erosion. Archaeologists recognize this as a feat of engineering and organization, suggesting the presence of a complex society with specialized labor and strong leadership. Yet, how exactly the city grew to such scale, covering nearly 200 acres, larger than many European capitals of its time, remains an open question. Evidence suggests that Great Zimbabwe was not isolated. Artifacts unearthed within its walls include Chinese porcelain, glass beads from Persia, and coins from the Arabian Peninsula. These finds indicate that the city was part of an extensive trade network, its wealth drawn from control of gold and ivory routes stretching across southern Africa. But while the evidence of trade is undeniable, the exact mechanisms of power, how this city rose to dominate such vast networks, are harder to reconstruct. Was its influence based purely on wealth, or did its enigmatic structures also play a symbolic or spiritual role in consolidating authority? The absence of written records only deepens the enigma. No inscriptions, no chronicles, no direct testimony of the people who built Great Zimbabwe survive. What we know comes from oral traditions, fragments of artifacts, and the silent witness of stone walls. And into this silence, speculation has always flowed. For centuries, outsiders refused to believe that Africans themselves could have built Great Zimbabwe. Early European explorers and colonists advanced theories that attributed the ruins to distant cultures, Phoenicians, Arabs, or even biblical figures. Some even claimed it was a remnant of the Queen of Sheba's realm, or linked it to King Solomon's mines. These ideas, rooted more in prejudice than evidence, have long since been discredited. Archaeology has firmly established that Great Zimbabwe was built by the ancestors of the Shona people, whose descendants still live in the region today. Yet even with this clarity, puzzles remain. Why was the great enclosure built on such a monumental scale, dwarfing the needs of a practical residence or fortress? What rituals may have been performed within its curved walls beneath the looming conical tower? Why were certain areas carefully restricted, as though access was limited to an elite priesthood or royalty? And why, after centuries of prominence, was the city gradually abandoned in the 15th century? Was it due to overgrazing and depletion of resources, shifts in trade routes, political upheaval, or something more elusive, a spiritual or cultural change that made the city itself no longer sacred? Some researchers speculate that Great Zimbabwe was more than just a capital. They suggest it may have been a pilgrimage site, a ceremonial center where religious and political authority merged. The layout of the structures, the careful separation of enclosures, and the presence of ritual objects, such as soapstone bird carvings, hint at a symbolic dimension that archaeology has yet to fully decode. Were these birds representations of ancestors, totems of clans, or emblems of spiritual power? Their meaning, like the tower itself, remains uncertain. Fringe interpretations reach further still. Some see the precision of the stonework and the sheer scale of the site as evidence of lost techniques, perhaps even advanced knowledge unknown to conventional history. Others point to alignments in the structures and suggest astronomical significance, proposing that the city may have been constructed with the heavens in mind, its walls and towers marking solstices or sacred constellations. While mainstream archaeology treats such claims cautiously, the silence of the ruins leaves room for such questions to linger. Today, as one walks among the towering walls of Great Zimbabwe, the sense of awe is immediate. The stones rise high, curving in graceful arcs, enclosing spaces that once teemed with life and ceremony. The passageways are narrow, funneling movement with deliberate intention, as though guiding initiates through a ritual journey. The sheer scale of the great enclosure overwhelms, its tower standing like an unsolved riddle at its center. The wind carries across the plateau, whistling through the gaps in the stone, as though the city itself whispers fragments of a story we no longer understand. Was Great Zimbabwe simply the political and economic heart of a thriving kingdom, or was it something more, a sacred landscape where stone was used not only to impress, but to embody a vision of the world? Did its builders encode spiritual meaning into its very walls, meaning that now escapes us? And perhaps most hauntingly, what knowledge, what traditions were lost when the city was abandoned, its voice falling silent beneath centuries of time? The ruins remain, vast and enduring, a silent testimony to human ambition and mystery. And as long as their purpose remains uncertain, Great Zimbabwe will continue to invite the same question. What story, carved into these walls of stone, still waits to be told? Off the southern coast of Europe, on the small island of Malta, a windswept limestone ridge looks out over the Mediterranean. Here stand the ruins of Hagar, a prehistoric temple complex older than Stonehenge and the pyramids of Egypt. Time and weather have softened its edges, yet the stones still rise with a quiet authority, some weighing over 20 tons, their pale surfaces glowing in the sun. Arranged in a series of apses and chambers, the site has an unmistakable aura of ritual, as though even in ruin it holds on to the memory of ceremonies once performed within its walls. Archaeologists date Hagar to around 3600 BC, placing it among the oldest freestanding stone monuments in the world. It forms part of Malta's wider megalithic tradition, which includes several temple complexes scattered across the islands. Together, they suggest a culture of astonishing ambition and skill, one that could quarry, transport, and raise massive limestone slabs with nothing more than stone and bone tools. But beyond the impressive engineering lies a deeper question. Why? What drove an ancient people, living on a small, isolated island, to devote such immense effort to building these monumental sanctuaries? The structure of Hagar is both practical and symbolic. Its plan is composed of curving chambers branching off from a central passage, resembling the organic form of a womb or body. Many scholars interpret this as evidence of fertility worship, reinforced by the discovery of statuettes, so-called fat lady figures, representing corpulent maternal forms. Could the temple have been dedicated to a mother goddess, a celebration of life, death, and renewal? Or were the figures symbols of abundance, ensuring prosperity for the community? The answers are uncertain, but the imagery suggests a spiritual system deeply connected to cycles of nature and human existence. Yet the mysteries of Hagar extend beyond symbolic carvings. The orientation of the temple appears to align with celestial events. On the morning of the summer solstice, sunlight passes through the entrance and illuminates a particular chamber within. On the equinoxes, light strikes another key point, creating a dramatic interplay between stone and sun. Was this alignment deliberate? If so, it implies not only ritual intent, but also advanced astronomical knowledge, a capacity to track the movement of the heavens and encode them into architecture. What purpose did this serve? Was it a calendar for planting and harvesting, a ritual theater connecting worshippers to cosmic cycles, or something even more profound, a bridge between earth and sky? Adding to the intrigue are the temple's construction techniques. The massive slabs of limestone, some exceeding the height of a person by several times, were quarried locally. But how were they moved and positioned with such accuracy? Conventional explanations suggest the use of wooden rollers, ropes, and sheer manpower, Yet the logistics remain daunting. The walls fit together with remarkable stability, and certain stones feature small drilled holes, perhaps once used for hinges or ritual devices. Were these simply practical features, or did they serve symbolic functions now lost to us? Speculation has long surrounded Malta's megaliths. Some fringe theories propose that the temples are remnants of an even older culture, one predating the dates suggested by archaeology. Others suggest that their alignments and symbolic forms indicate knowledge inherited from a lost civilization, perhaps one tied to myths of Atlantis or other forgotten worlds. While such claims remain outside the mainstream, they persist because the temples themselves inspire awe that transcends conventional explanation. Equally compelling is the question of community. Malta in the Neolithic era was a small, isolated island with limited resources. Why devote such monumental effort to ritual architecture rather than survival alone? Did the act of building these temples serve to unify society, binding people together under shared spiritual and ceremonial obligations? Or was Hagar more than just a temple, perhaps a center of pilgrimage, drawing people from across the Mediterranean to witness rituals and renew connections? The lack of written records leaves only stone, silence, and speculation. Today, the ruins of Hagar stand exposed to the sea winds, their massive forms protected by a modern shelter but still commanding the surrounding landscape. Walking among the stones, one feels a strange mixture of intimacy and grandeur, chambers that seem both human-sized and yet designed for something larger than life. The solstice light still pierces the temple with uncanny precision, just as it did over 5,000 years ago, reminding us that the builders not only shaped stone, but also harnessed the rhythms of the cosmos. And so the questions endure. Was Hagar a sanctuary of fertility, a cosmic observatory, or a fusion of both, a place where human and celestial cycles were woven together in stone? Was it the work of a local culture developing extraordinary knowledge in isolation, or the inheritance of traditions far older, passed along forgotten roots of the ancient world? The stones themselves remain silent, offering no definitive answer. They rise from the earth as they have for millennia, whispering through their alignments, their chambers, and their sheer presence that something important once unfolded here. And as the Mediterranean sun sets beyond the horizon, casting long shadows across the limestone blocks, one cannot help but wonder, what truths of the ancient world still lie hidden within these timeless walls, waiting to be rediscovered? On the arid northern coast of Peru, where the Andes give way to desert valleys, a vast ruin lies buried beneath layers of sand and time. At first glance, Sechin Bajo seems unassuming. Low mounds of earth, broken stone walls, and weathered platforms. But beneath this surface lies one of the oldest monumental sites in the Americas, a place that challenges our understanding of how early societies in the Andes lived, organized, and built. Archaeologists have traced the origins of Sechin Bajo back more than 3,500 years, with evidence suggesting earlier occupation reaching as far as 3,600 BC. That makes it older than many of the world's most famous ceremonial centers, predating not only the Inca, but also much of classical antiquity. What has been uncovered is staggering. Massive plazas, multi-tiered platforms, and intricately decorated walls. Features that speak not of a small settlement, but of an organized society capable of mobilizing labor and shaping the land on a monumental scale. At the heart of the site stands a sunken circular plaza nearly 50 feet across, surrounded by stone walls and steps. Its design is both practical and symbolic. Sunken plazas are a recurring feature in early Andean architecture, often interpreted as spaces for communal gathering, ritual, or performance. But the exact purpose of Sechin Bajo's circular court is uncertain. Was it a ceremonial stage where priests presided over rites? A communal gathering place for seasonal festivals? Or something else? Perhaps a symbolic representation of the cosmos, carved into earth and stone. Surrounding the plaza are rectangular platforms and enclosures, their walls sometimes adorned with relief carvings. Some of the most haunting images depict human figures, warriors, priests, or perhaps sacrificial victims, rendered in simple but powerful lines. Other carvings show severed heads and limbs, imagery that suggests violence or ritual sacrifice. Were these depictions historical records of battles fought, warnings to outsiders, or symbolic expressions of life and death cycles? Scholars debate their meaning, but their stark presence gives the site a weight that is difficult to dismiss. Mainstream archaeology views Sechin Bajo as part of a broader tradition of early Andean ceremonial centers, a precursor to later, more complex societies such as the Moche or Chavín. The site shows that even in deep antiquity, people in this region were capable of large-scale organization, complex ritual, and monumental construction. Yet mysteries remain. How could a society with no metal tools, no draft animals, and limited agricultural technology produce such an expansive and enduring complex? What social or religious forces drove people to devote so much labor to building and maintaining these structures? Speculation grows from what we do not know. Some suggest that Sechin Bajo represents not merely a ceremonial site, but the very origin of Andean civilization, a place where ideas of hierarchy, ritual, and power were first etched into stone. Others propose that it was a site of pilgrimage, drawing people from across the valleys and coasts to participate in rituals that bound disparate communities together. And then there are more radical suggestions, that its age and complexity hint at cultural traditions far older than currently recognized, perhaps even remnants of a forgotten chapter of human history in the Americas. Adding to the intrigue is the site's relationship to time itself. Excavations have revealed successive layers of construction, one platform built upon another, one plaza replacing the last. This suggests that Sechin Bajo was not a static monument, but a living site, continuously rebuilt and reinterpreted over centuries. Why did each generation choose to bury the old and build anew on top of it? Was this a practical solution to erosion and decay, or was it symbolic, a ritual act of renewal, layering time itself into the architecture? The imagery of violence carved into its stones raises equally unsettling questions. Were these depictions literal records of conflict and conquest, suggesting an early culture of warfare? Or were they symbolic, representing mythic battles between gods, the struggle between life and death, or the sacrifices demanded by the cosmos? In a landscape where survival was always precarious, were such rituals meant to ensure fertility, rain, and stability in an unpredictable world? More speculative voices suggest even broader interpretations. Some propose that the astronomical alignments at Sechin Bajo, if they exist, may reveal a deeper understanding of celestial cycles. Others argue that the reliefs and plazas may encode mythologies far older than the site itself, passed down orally and carved into stone as a permanent record of cosmic memory. Could Sechin Bajo have been not just a ceremonial center, but a repository of knowledge, an ancient library inscribed in architecture and symbolism? Walking the site today, the atmosphere is stark yet haunting. The desert wind sweeps across low walls and plazas, carrying with it the silence of millennia. The circular court lies empty, its steps worn by time but still echoing the memory of gatherings long past. The carved figures stare out with expressionless faces, their meaning obscured, their message unresolved. And all around, the layers of stone whisper of generations who came, built, worshipped, and then vanished into history. Sechin Bajo challenges us not only with its age but with its ambiguity. It is old enough to unsettle assumptions about the rise of civilization in the Andes, complex enough to raise questions about how early societies organized themselves, and enigmatic enough to resist simple interpretation. Was it the birthplace of Andean ritual life? A stage for political power enforced through spectacle and violence? Or something even more elusive, a site whose purpose was spiritual, cosmic, and deeply symbolic in ways we may never fully understand? The ruins do not answer. They only endure, their walls crumbling yet persistent, their carvings fading but still visible. And so we are left to wonder, in the sands of northern Peru, what secrets of humanity's earliest experiments with civilization still lie buried, waiting for discovery. On the slopes near the ancient citadel of Mycenae in Greece, a great mound rises from the earth. From a distance it looks like a grassy hill, blending into the rugged landscape of the Peloponnesian Peninsula. But approach closer, and a monumental entrance begins to take shape. A tall, narrow doorway framed by massive stone blocks, leading into the earth itself. This is the so-called Treasury of Atreus, also known as the Tomb of Agamemnon, one of the most impressive and enigmatic monuments of the Mycenaean world. Step inside, and the effect is immediate. A long passageway, or dromos, leads to a vast circular chamber carved into the hillside. The corbelled dome above soars to nearly 50 feet in height, making it the largest of its kind for over 1,000 years until the Roman Pantheon surpassed it. Constructed around 1250 BC, the Treasury of Atreus is a tholos tomb, one of several beehive-shaped burial structures built by the Mycenaeans. Its engineering is nothing short of astonishing. Enormous blocks of stone, some weighing more than 100 tons, are perfectly fitted together without mortar, forming a structure that has endured for more than 3 millennia. Mainstream archaeology interprets the treasury as a royal tomb, most likely for a powerful ruler of Mycenae. The name Atreus comes from later Greek tradition, connecting the site to the legendary father of Agamemnon, though no direct evidence ties the tomb to these mythical figures. Still, the association with Homeric legend lingers, casting the site in a shadow of myth as much as history. Was this truly the resting place of a great Mycenaean king, or was its purpose more symbolic? A monument not just to an individual, but to power itself. The precision of its construction invites closer scrutiny. How did Bronze Age builders, without iron tools or advanced machinery, quarry and transport such immense stones, some nearly as large as those used in Egypt's pyramids? How were they maneuvered into place to form a dome so stable that it still stands after more than 3,000 years? Archaeologists suggest the use of ramps, wooden sledges, and coordinated labor, yet the scale of the task remains daunting. Could such achievements indicate not only technical skill, but also an organizational power far greater than we usually credit to Mycenaean society? Inside the chamber, traces of grandeur still linger. Though the tomb was looted long ago, fragments suggest that its interior may once have been adorned with bronze, gold, and ornate decorations. The entrance itself was framed with polished red and green marble columns, now housed in museums, giving a sense of the splendor that once greeted visitors. Was the structure merely functional, a burial site, or was it also a statement of wealth and divine authority? Stone and treasure combined to project the power of rulers who claimed connection to the gods. Beyond its practical purpose, the Treasury of Atreus raises symbolic questions. The beehive shape of the tomb echoes forms seen in other ancient cultures, linking earth and sky in a single architectural gesture. The circular chamber, entered through a linear passage, suggests a journey inward, perhaps a metaphor for death, rebirth, or passage to another world. Was this design purely functional, Or did it embody cosmological ideas, with the dome representing the heavens and the buried ruler positioned at the axis between mortal and divine? Speculation grows in the spaces where certainty falters. Some researchers propose that Tholos tombs like this may not have served exclusively as burials, but also as ritual centers, where ceremonies linked the living to their ancestors. Others wonder if their alignment with the landscape hints at astronomical connections. Could the entrance have been oriented to solstices, equinoxes, or the rising of specific stars, transforming the tomb into a cosmic stage where heaven and earth met in ritual drama? Fringe theories push even further. Some point to the extraordinary scale and precision of the treasury, and ask whether knowledge or techniques have been lost to time. Could the Mycenaeans have inherited traditions of building from an earlier, forgotten culture? Was the monument intended not only as a tomb, but as a structure resonant with sound, energy, or symbolism we no longer recognize? While mainstream scholarship resists such ideas, the monument's endurance and mystery leave ample room for wonder. Today, standing within the treasury of Atreus, the experience is almost overwhelming. The chamber swallows sound, the curved walls amplifying footsteps into echoes that seem to come from beyond. Light filters faintly from the doorway, leaving most of the chamber in shadow, as though the space were designed to evoke mystery and awe. It is easy to imagine ancient rituals unfolding here. Processions by torchlight, chants resonating against the stone, offerings left to a ruler whose memory was preserved in both myth and monument. And yet, the silence of the site persists. Who exactly was buried here? Why was such monumental effort devoted to this structure, when most Mycenaean burials were simpler? What did the circular design mean to the people who built it, and why did they choose this form to house their dead? The treasury of Atreus stands as both an achievement and a riddle. It is a testament to the engineering brilliance of the Mycenaeans, yet it also provokes questions that reach beyond history into the realm of myth, cosmology, and speculation. And as the dome looms overhead, vast and enduring, one cannot help but wonder, was this tomb built only for a king, or was it meant to preserve something greater, an ancient truth still locked in stone? Deep in the folds of the Peruvian Andes, high above the rushing waters of the Apurimac River, lies a city in the clouds. Hidden by dense vegetation and perched on steep mountain ridges, Choquequirao, often called the sister city of Machu Picchu, emerges like a ghost from the past. Terraces cascade down the slopes in ordered lines, while stone walls, staircases, and ceremonial platforms stretch across the mountainside. Reaching the site requires days of trekking through rugged terrain, and it is this isolation that has preserved Choquequirao's aura of mystery, a place seemingly untouched by time. Archaeologists date the city to the 15th and 16th centuries, linking it to the late Inca period. It is believed to have served as a royal estate, ceremonial center, and perhaps even a refuge for the Incas during the Spanish conquest. Its name, derived from the Quechua language, means cradle of gold, hinting at both its splendor and its significance. Yet, despite its association with the mighty Inca Empire, much of Choquequirao's story remains unclear. Why was it built in such a remote and inaccessible location, perched on sheer slopes more than 9,000 feet above sea level? And what role did it truly play in the fading chapters of Inca history? The architecture of Choquequirao is unmistakably Inca. Its finely crafted stonework, agricultural terraces, and ceremonial plazas echo the style of Machu Picchu. But the site also possesses unique features. Among the terraces, archaeologists have uncovered striking white stone designs inlaid into the walls, figures of llamas marching in long processions across the mountainside. These decorative motifs are rare in Inca architecture, suggesting that Choquequirao held symbolic or ritual importance beyond agriculture. Were these llamas meant to represent offerings, guiding the souls of the dead, or perhaps symbolizing the caravans that connected distant regions of the empire? Their meaning remains uncertain, but their presence deepens the site's enigmatic aura. Mainstream interpretations suggest that Choquequirao was one of the last strongholds of the Inca resistance. After the fall of Cusco to the Spanish in 1533, surviving Inca nobles retreated to remote mountain refuges. Some sources hint that Choquequirao may have been a staging ground for Manco Inca and his successors as they waged guerrilla campaigns against Spanish forces. Its strategic location, remote, defensible, and connected by hidden trails to Vilcabamba, the Inca's final refuge, supports this view. Yet direct evidence is limited, and much of this interpretation rests on speculation. If Choquequirao was indeed a refuge, why has no definitive record survived to confirm its role? Was it deliberately kept secret, its trails hidden from outsiders? Or does its mystery arise from something deeper? Perhaps a purpose not entirely military, but spiritual. The ceremonial platforms and plazas suggest a site where rituals were central. Some archaeologists argue that Choquequirao was as much a sacred landscape as a fortress, a place where the Incas could connect with their gods in times of crisis. Its location, perched between snow-capped peaks and plunging valleys, may have been chosen to embody the Inca concept of harmony between the earthly and divine. Speculation extends further. Some researchers point to the city's remoteness and grandeur as evidence that Choquequirao was designed as a symbolic counterpart to Machu Picchu, a deliberate twin in both form and function. Could the two sites have represented dual aspects of Inca cosmology? Sun and moon, life and death, ascent and descent? If so, Choquequirao might not only have been a refuge of the fallen empire, but also a spiritual counterpart, embodying balance within the Inca worldview. Then there are the more speculative theories. Some propose that Choquequirao predates the Incas, its foundations built upon an older culture that the Incas later adopted and expanded. Others imagine that its terraces and ceremonial spaces align with celestial events, suggesting astronomical functions similar to other Andean sites. Could the placement of the llama terraces, the orientation of the plazas, and the city's alignment with surrounding peaks have encoded a deeper cosmological map, one we have yet to fully decode? Today, only about 1/3 of Choquequirao has been excavated, leaving the majority still buried beneath jungle and soil. What lies hidden in those unexcavated terraces and chambers? Could further exploration reveal inscriptions, artifacts, or structures that change our understanding of the site entirely? The silence of the city offers no easy answers, only the quiet suggestion that much remains undiscovered. Walking through Choquequirao, the sense of mystery is palpable. The terraces spread like steps into the mountainside, each one a testament to human determination against a forbidding landscape. The plazas stand empty, yet they seem to echo with the sounds of long-vanished ceremonies, chants, music, and the shuffle of pilgrims gathered in devotion. The air is thin, the sky vast, and everywhere the stone seems alive, as if carrying within it a memory of its builders. Why here, at the edge of the empire, so far from the centers of Inca power? Was Choquequirao truly a last bastion of resistance, or was it always intended to be a place apart? An elevated sanctuary meant to outlast conquest and time itself. The questions linger, unanswered, in the stillness of the mountains. And so, Choquequirao endures, silent, remote, and only partially revealed. Its terraces and plazas speak of power and ritual, yet its deeper meaning remains locked in stone. Perhaps the unexcavated chambers still hold clues to its true story. Or perhaps, like so many ancient sites, it was built not only to serve the living, but to guard secrets meant never to be fully known. And as the mists rise from the valleys and settle over its walls, one cannot help but wonder what truths still lie hidden in the city of the clouds. Amid the vast desert of northwestern Saudi Arabia, where winds sweep across an endless expanse of sandstone cliffs, rise the haunting monuments of Mada'in Saleh. Carved directly into the golden red rock, these tombs stand like silent sentinels, their facades sharply etched against the sky. Each one bears the mark of incredible craftsmanship. Columns, cornices, and pediments cut with precision into towering cliff faces, their symmetry striking in the midst of an otherwise barren landscape. From afar, they appear as doorways leading into another world. Up close, they reveal a silence that is almost unsettling. Known in antiquity as Hagar, Mada'in Saleh was once a thriving outpost of the Nabatean kingdom, the same culture that created the more famous city of Petra in present-day Jordan. Archaeologists date the site to the 1st century AD, when it served as a key stop along caravan routes that carried spices, incense, and precious goods between Arabia and the Mediterranean world. More than 100 tombs, many elaborately decorated, have been found here. Their inscriptions, written in Nabatean script, identify the names of the deceased and sometimes the families who claimed the chambers. Yet beyond these fragments, much of the story remains elusive. Mainstream interpretations see Mada'in Saleh as a necropolis, a city of the dead, where Nabatean elites were laid to rest. The grandeur of its tombs reflects the wealth and influence the community once held, while the inscriptions suggest a society deeply concerned with ancestry and ownership of sacred spaces. Yet, even within this framework, mysteries abound. Why did the Nabateans, whose capital at Petra was already a monumental marvel, create such an extensive complex here in the desert? Was it simply a regional extension of their empire, or did Mada'in Saleh hold a unique spiritual or symbolic significance? The design of the tombs only adds to the intrigue. Each facade seems to echo architectural traditions borrowed from distant lands: Egyptian-style crowns, Hellenistic columns, and Mesopotamian motifs blended into a uniquely Nabatean style. Was this eclecticism the result of cultural exchange along trade routes? Or does it suggest a deliberate attempt to create monuments that embodied a universal language of power and eternity? The facades, however, often conceal simple interiors: small, undecorated chambers cut into stone, a striking contrast to the elaborate exteriors. Why such a disparity between the grandeur of what is seen and the austerity of what lies within? Speculation stretches into deeper territory. Some scholars suggest that Mada'in Saleh may have served not only as a burial ground but also as a ritual landscape, a place where the living interacted with the dead in ceremonies we no longer understand. The careful alignment of certain tombs and the repetition of symbolic forms hint at patterns beyond mere decoration. Could the site have been designed to reflect cosmological beliefs, with the facades acting as thresholds between worlds, the earthly and the divine, the temporal and the eternal? Local traditions add further layers of mystery. In Islamic texts, the site is linked to the ancient people of Thamud, described as a community that defied the prophet Saleh and was destroyed as divine punishment. This association cast Mada'in Saleh in a shadow of fear and awe for centuries, with some locals regarding the ruins as cursed. Was this legend a later reinterpretation of the already mysterious tombs, or does it echo an even older memory, one rooted in the true fate of the city? More speculative ideas push beyond cultural history. The sheer scale and detail of the tomb facades, carved with such geometric precision into unforgiving rock, invite questions about how the Nabateans achieved their work. Tools and methods are still debated. Were they using simple iron chisels and hammers? Or had they developed more advanced techniques for quarrying and smoothing stone? How were designs so perfectly scaled across towering vertical faces? Could knowledge have been inherited from earlier, forgotten cultures whose influence lingers in stone? And then there is the most enigmatic question. Why here? Mada'in Saleh lies far from major population centers, in a harsh desert environment where survival would have been difficult. Was its location chosen purely for strategic purposes, controlling trade routes and oasis stops? Or was the desert itself part of its meaning, a liminal place where tombs could face eternity, untouched by the distractions of daily life? Walking among the tombs today, the sense of absence is overwhelming. The facades stand perfectly silent, their inscriptions faded but still legible, their chambers long since emptied. Unlike Petra, with its temples and theaters, Mada'in Saleh offers no evidence of bustling civic life. It is a city of monuments without inhabitants, a necropolis without clear explanation. The silence is broken only by the wind as it rushes across the desert, whispering against stone that has stood for 2,000 years. And so, the mystery persists. Were the tombs of Mada'in Saleh simply the product of a wealthy outpost of the Nabatean kingdom, a testament to their artistry and power? Or do they represent something deeper, a symbolic landscape whose meaning has been lost, preserved only in the stark beauty of its carved facades? Perhaps the desert itself still holds the answers, buried beneath sand and time. For now, the treasury-like entrances stare outward, their thresholds sealed by silence, their secrets intact. And as the sun sets over the sandstone cliffs, casting long shadows across the facades, one cannot help but wonder, what stories of faith, power, and forgotten worlds still lie hidden within the tombs of Mada'in Saleh? Nestled in the lush river valley of Chaquequirao in Bali, hidden among rice terraces and dense tropical foliage, lies one of the island's most enigmatic monuments. Gunung is not a temple in the conventional sense, built stone upon stone, but rather a series of colossal shrines carved directly into sheer cliff faces. As one descends the steep stone steps toward the Karahan River, the sight is breathtaking. Towering facades, some nearly 25 feet tall, emerging from the rock itself, framed by vines and moss, as though nature and human hands conspired to create them together. The site is thought to date back to the 11th century AD, during the reign of King Anak Wongsu of the Udayana dynasty. Local tradition holds that the monuments were created as memorials to the king, his wives, and his concubines. 10 rock-cut shrines, or kandi, line the cliffs on either side of the river, arranged with apparent symmetry. Each shrine is a vast vertical niche fronted by what appear to be multi-tiered towers, echoing the architecture of Balinese and Javanese temples. But here, everything is hewn from living stone. Unlike freestanding temples, these cannot be dismantled, transported, or rebuilt. They are as permanent as the cliffs themselves. Mainstream archaeology interprets Gunung as both a sacred burial complex and a meditation retreat. The surrounding valley contains caves and hermitages, small chambers cut into the cliffs where ascetics may once have lived in solitude. The river, flowing directly through the site, was and remains deeply symbolic in Balinese spirituality, a source of purification and life. It is no accident that the shrines face the water, as if eternally participating in its cleansing flow. Yet, even with these explanations, questions arise. Were the towering monuments truly tombs, symbolic markers for the dead? Or did they serve another purpose, embodying something more than memorials in stone? The engineering itself raises puzzles. Carving these massive shrines into the cliffs with the tools available at the time would have been a monumental task. Simple iron chisels, guided by patience and precision, are believed to have been the instruments of creation. But what drove such labor? Was it purely devotion to a king, or an expression of deeper religious vision? The verticality of the monuments, lofty, tiered, rising upward yet fixed immovably into the rock, suggests aspiration, eternity, perhaps even a symbolic reaching toward the divine. Local legends add another layer of intrigue. One story claims that the monuments were carved overnight by the giant Kibo Iwa, a mythical figure of immense strength who is said to have shaped entire landscapes with his bare hands. While clearly mythological, such tales reflect the awe these structures inspired among the Balinese themselves, who regarded them as creations beyond the capacity of ordinary human effort. Was this simply poetic storytelling or an echo of something more mysterious, a recognition that the origins of Gunung Kawi remain partly obscured? More speculative theories point to symbolic alignments. Some researchers have noted that the shrine's arrangement across the river valley may hold cosmological significance, reflecting the balance between masculine and feminine, life and death, heaven and earth. The river itself could symbolize the boundary between worlds, with shrines on either side representing dualities central to Balinese belief. Others propose that the complex may have functioned not just as tombs or hermitages, but as part of a ritual landscape where priests, rulers, and initiates participated in ceremonies meant to bridge human life with divine order. And yet, for all the explanations, mysteries remain. No inscriptions explicitly state whose remains were placed here. Were the shrines truly dedicated to King Anak Wungsu and his family, or has tradition attributed their origin to royal figures without direct evidence? Why carve such monumental structures into cliffs, rather than build temples in the more typical Balinese style? Was permanence the goal? A desire to merge memory with the eternal presence of the land itself? Or was there a more esoteric purpose, perhaps an intention that the shrines function not only as memorials, but as spiritual gateways? As with many ancient structures, speculation extends further. Some fringe thinkers suggest that Gunung Kawi's shrines may predate the dynasty traditionally credited with their creation, their true origins lost in oral tradition. They point to the weathering of the stone and the lack of definitive inscriptions as hints of an older foundation later adopted by the Balinese kings. Others imagine that the monuments encode cosmic patterns, their proportions reflecting principles of sacred geometry, an attempt to mirror the structure of the universe in stone. While mainstream archaeology offers little support for such ideas, the ambiguity of the site ensures they remain part of its mystery. Standing before the cliff-carved facades, the atmosphere is profound. The shrines loom silent and immovable, their outlines softened by moss and creeping plants, as though nature itself is reclaiming them even as they endure. The sound of the river provides a constant backdrop, a reminder that time flows even as stone stands still. In the small caves nearby, one can imagine the flicker of oil lamps, the chants of hermits, the solitude of meditation. This was not merely a place of the dead. It was, in some sense, a living monastery carved from the mountain where silence and stone shaped human experience. And so, Gunung Kawi stands at the intersection of history and myth. Was it a royal tomb complex, a monument to dynastic power? Was it a sanctuary where ascetics sought enlightenment? Or was it something more enigmatic still, a sacred landscape designed to connect the human world with realms beyond? The cliffs hold their silence, offering no answers, only enduring forms that invite wonder. As the sun sets over the valley and shadows stretch across the facades, the question lingers. Were these shrines carved only for kings, or were they also carved for eternity itself? And in the quiet of the river's song, one cannot help but wonder what truths lie hidden within the stone, waiting to be uncovered in the heart of Bali's most mysterious sanctuary. Carved into the volcanic basalt cliffs of Maharashtra in western India lies one of the most extraordinary complexes of rock-cut monuments in the world. The Ellora caves stretch across more than a mile of rugged escarpment, their entrances cut into the hillside like gateways to another realm. From the outside, the sheer scale is overwhelming. Dozens of openings leading into sanctuaries, halls, and shrines, all painstakingly hollowed from solid stone. Step inside, and the wonder deepens. Columns rise with geometric precision, ceilings are adorned with intricate carvings, and walls come alive with stories rendered in relief. It is not a single monument, but a city of stone, spanning centuries of devotion, artistry, and mystery. Ellora consists of 34 major caves created between the 6th and 10th centuries AD. What makes the site remarkable is not only its size, but its inclusivity. Buddhist, Hindu, and Jain temples coexist here, side by side, reflecting a period of unusual religious harmony. The craftsmanship speaks to generations of artisans who chiseled their vision into living rock, transforming cliff faces into sacred architecture. Yet, amid the wealth of detail and historical attribution, questions remain. How did ancient builders accomplish such feats with the tools and technology available at the time? And why did they choose this method of creation, carving downward and inward, rather than constructing upward from the ground? Among Ellora's wonders, one stands out above all: the Kailasa Temple, or Cave 16. Unlike a typical cave temple, Kailasa is not merely hollowed into rock, but carved free from it, sculpted top-down from a single massive outcrop. Covering twice the area of the Parthenon and standing nearly 100 feet high, it is considered the largest monolithic structure on Earth. Every column, shrine, and statue was painstakingly excavated from the mountain itself, leaving behind not an absence of stone, but an entire temple complex revealed from within the living rock. To remove an estimated 200,000 tons of basalt using chisels, hammers, and sheer labor is, even by modern standards, an extraordinary achievement. Mainstream scholarship attributes Kailasa to the Rashtrakuta king Krishna I in the 8th century AD, crediting his reign with the commissioning of this monumental work. But here lies the enigma. Could such a vast and complex structure have been carved within the span of a single ruler's reign? Some argue that the project must have spanned generations, though inscriptions attribute it specifically to Krishna I. If so, how was such speed and scale achieved? Was there a highly organized workforce numbering in the thousands, or might there have been techniques, perhaps now lost, that allowed for faster, more precise excavation? The symbolic purpose of Kailasa also invites reflection. Dedicated to Lord Shiva, the temple is designed as a three-dimensional representation of Mount Kailash, the mythical abode of the god. Its courtyards, halls, and shrines are aligned with ritual precision, creating not just a temple but a cosmological map in stone. Surrounding the central sanctuary are depictions of gods, demons, animals, and mythological scenes carved in exquisite detail. Was the temple intended as more than a place of worship? Could it have been designed as an architectural embodiment of the universe itself, a sacred diagram meant to connect the human world with the divine order? Beyond Kailasa, the broader Ellora complex presents its own mysteries. The Buddhist caves include vast monasteries with pillared halls and serene statues of the Buddha, some of which are over 1,500 years old. The Jain caves, created later, display meticulous carvings that emphasize ascetic ideals and cosmic symbolism. Together, these monuments represent an extraordinary diversity of spiritual thought. But what compelled builders of different faiths to create such an immense concentration of temples in one place? Was Ellora simply a convenient trade route hub, or was there something about the geology, the landscape, or the spiritual energy of the site that drew people here over centuries? Speculation extends beyond the historical. Some researchers note the precision of the carvings and the sheer quantity of stone removed, suggesting that the techniques used may have been more advanced than is commonly assumed. Could ancient builders have possessed methods for softening or cutting stone that we no longer recognize? Others point to alignments within the complex, proposing that certain caves may have been designed with astronomical significance, oriented to track solstices or celestial events. While such ideas remain debated, they reflect the persistent allure of Ellora as a site that seems to transcend the ordinary limits of its time. Even the practical questions remain elusive. Where was all the excavated stone taken? To carve Kailasa alone, hundreds of thousands of tons of rock had to be removed, yet there is no definitive evidence of spoil heaps or quarries containing this material. Was it reused in other construction, or dispersed so thoroughly that it left no trace? The absence of clear evidence adds to the sense that Ellora conceals as much as it reveals. Walking through the caves today, the atmosphere is striking. In one chamber, a serene Buddha sits in meditation, illuminated only by shafts of sunlight filtering through stone-cut windows. In another, Shiva dances the cosmic Tandava, surrounded by deities frozen in mid-motion. In the Jain caves, delicate carvings of celestial beings seem to shimmer in the dim light, their forms emerging from stone as if alive. Each cave feels like a world unto itself, yet together they create a vast spiritual landscape carved into a single mountainside. What remains most compelling about Ellora is the sense of intention. These were not random works of art scattered across centuries, but a deliberate concentration of sacred architecture executed on a scale that challenges belief. Why here? Why in this way? Were the builders simply expressing devotion, or did they seek to create a sanctuary that embodied a vision of the cosmos itself? The stones of Ellora stand as testimony to human creativity and persistence, yet their silence leaves space for mystery. Was Kailasa Temple truly the work of a single king's reign, or the culmination of knowledge passed down through generations? Did the builders possess techniques now lost to us, allowing them to carve stone with a speed and precision we struggle to imagine? Or is the true mystery not how Ellora was built, but why? What vision compelled generations of artisans to transform an entire mountain into a sacred city of stone? As the sun sets over the basalt cliffs, shadows lengthen across the facades, and the caves grow quiet. The carvings, the chambers, the colossal temple itself remain, their meanings partly clear and partly concealed. And so the question lingers: does Ellora hold only the story of devotion, or something more, a secret carved into stone, waiting still to be understood? Beneath the Mediterranean sun, on the rugged island of Sardinia, rise enigmatic stone towers that have watched over the land for thousands of years. They are called nurag, cylindrical megalithic structures built of massive blocks of stone, often without mortar, their weathered forms dotting hillsides, valleys, and coastlines. Some stand alone, isolated in wild landscapes, while others form part of complex settlements, with defensive walls, courtyards, and smaller towers clustered around them. From a distance, they resemble ancient fortresses, but up close, their purpose is far less certain. The nurag are among the oldest and most distinctive monuments of Europe, yet they remain shrouded in mystery. Scholars generally date them to between 1800 and 500 BC, built by a culture now long vanished, the Nuragic civilization. Over 7,000 of these towers have been identified across Sardinia, though it is believed that in antiquity there may have been tens of thousands. They are so characteristic of the island that they lend their name to its ancient inhabitants, and yet the question persists: who were these people, and why did they construct such imposing stone towers? Each nurag varies in form, but many share a common design. Their central feature is a truncated cone-shaped tower, sometimes reaching heights of 60 feet, built of large basalt or granite blocks carefully stacked and fitted together. Inside, spiral staircases climb through the thick walls, leading to vaulted chambers roofed with corbelled domes, a technique achieved by progressively overlapping stones until the gap is closed at the top. This method of construction predates the true arch and demonstrates remarkable engineering skill. Some sites, such as Su Nuraxi at Barumini, reveal sprawling complexes of interconnected towers and villages, hinting at a high degree of social organization and architectural sophistication. But what were these structures for? Theories abound. Many scholars argue that they served as defensive fortresses, strongholds from which local leaders controlled their territory. The thick walls, narrow entrances, and elevated vantage points would certainly support this interpretation. Yet not all nuraj are situated on strategic hilltops or along defensive lines. Many stand in open plains, far from obvious military necessity. If they were purely fortresses, why build so many in such varied locations? Another theory holds that they were elite residences, symbols of power for local chieftains or clans. Their imposing presence could have marked centers of authority, a physical expression of hierarchy in nuragic society. Yet their construction would have required immense communal effort, suggesting that their meaning extended beyond the needs of individual families. Could they have been both symbols of authority and communal monuments, blending practical use with ritual significance? The possibility of religious or astronomical functions also lingers. Some researchers point to alignments of certain nurag with solstices, lunar standstills, or particular constellations, proposing that they may have served as ceremonial observatories. The corbelled chambers within, often cool, dark, and resonant, may have created spaces intended for rituals, invoking sound and atmosphere as part of sacred practice. Were they temples to deities now forgotten, their symbolism encoded in stone? Or were they instruments for tracking the heavens, aligning human life with cosmic rhythms? The wider cultural context deepens the puzzle. The nuragic civilization left behind no written records. What survives are stone structures, bronze figurines, and scattered artifacts, mute testimony to a people who thrived for centuries yet left little narrative of themselves. Unlike the pyramids of Egypt or the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the nurag cannot be read in texts or inscriptions. Their story lies entirely in their physical presence. Without words to guide us, interpretation remains open, vulnerable to speculation and debate. This vacuum of certainty has given rise to more fringe ideas. Some suggest that the nurag were not merely functional structures, but gateways of a kind, markers of energy lines in the landscape, or remnants of a lost global culture of megalith builders. Others wonder whether their corbelled chambers were designed to amplify sound or resonance, hinting at uses beyond the purely practical. While such notions remain outside mainstream archaeology, they reflect the powerful aura of mystery that surrounds these towers, structures that seem to embody more than their stone alone. The scale of nuragic society also invites reflection. To construct thousands of towers across Sardinia, an island of limited size, would have required generations of organized labor, resource management, and social cohesion. Was this society more advanced than history currently allows us to see? And what became of it? By the time Roman authors described Sardinia, the nuragic civilization had long declined, leaving behind ruins whose meanings even the ancients no longer understood. Walking among the nuraj today, one feels both awe and disorientation. Inside, the air is cool, the walls pressing in, the staircases winding upward into chambers lit only by narrow slits. Outside, the massive stones loom with a weight that seems almost eternal. These are not fragile relics, but enduring monuments, their builders anonymous, yet their work indelible. The Nuraghi of Sardinia embody both achievement and absence. They tell us of a people capable of monumental architecture, yet they conceal the full story of why and how. Were they fortresses, palaces, temples, or all of these at once? Did they mark a society deeply tied to ritual, or a pragmatic culture obsessed with defense? Or do they suggest an entirely different worldview, one that does not fit neatly into categories we impose today? As the Mediterranean winds sweep across Sardinia, rustling through grasses around the ancient stones, the towers remain silent. They hold their secrets tightly, as they have for over 3,000 years. And so we are left to wonder, what knowledge, what purpose, what vision was once inscribed in these enduring forms of stone, and what might still be hidden, waiting for discovery beneath the Sardinian earth? Across the windswept expanse of the Golan Heights, where basalt fields stretch toward the horizon, and the silence is broken only by the rustle of grass and the cry of distant birds, lies a structure that defies easy explanation. Known locally as Rujm el-Hiri, or the Heap of the Wildcat, it appears from the ground as a jumble of dark stones, an indistinct ruin blending into the volcanic landscape. But when seen from above, its true form emerges. A massive, concentric arrangement of circular stone walls, spiraling inward toward a central cairn. From the sky, it resembles a great wheel laid upon the earth, or the mark of some colossal hand inscribed into the land thousands of years ago. The structure itself is monumental in scale. Its outermost circle spans nearly 500 feet in diameter, built from tens of thousands of basalt rocks, some weighing several tons. Within this circle are 4 additional rings, each meticulously constructed, their walls rising up to 8 feet high in some places. At the center lies a large burial mound or cairn, piled with stone, now partially collapsed. To walk among the rings is to wander through an ancient labyrinth, a place where each path narrows and widens in rhythm, as though guiding the visitor inward, step by step, toward the heart of a mystery. Archaeologists date Rujm el-Hiri to the early Bronze Age, around 3000 BC. That makes it older than the pyramids of Egypt, older than Stonehenge in Britain, yet its origins and purpose remain elusive. Unlike fortified settlements or palaces of the same period, this vast structure shows no evidence of being lived in. There are no hearths, no pottery shards, no tools scattered through its rings. Instead, it seems to have been built for reasons beyond mere survival. But what were those reasons? The most conventional explanation suggests that Rujm el-Hiri was a ceremonial or ritual site, a place where communities gathered to honor their dead or commune with the divine. The central cairn is thought to have once held a tomb, though no intact burial has ever been found there. Could it have been the resting place of an important leader, a chieftain or priest whose memory demanded a monument on a scale that would endure millennia? Or was the cairn itself symbolic, less a burial chamber and more a focal point for rites lost to time? Another line of inquiry looks to the sky. Some researchers have suggested that the alignments of the walls at Rujm el-Hiri may not be random. Certain openings in the circles seem to point toward the sunrise on the summer solstice and the equinox, hinting at an astronomical function. Was this a calendar in stone, a vast observatory by which early inhabitants of the Golan Heights tracked the movement of the heavens? If so, it would place Rujm el-Hiri within the same global tradition of megalithic sites connected to the stars, where earth and sky were bound together in sacred geometry. Yet the sheer scale of the monument raises further questions. Why would a Bronze Age society, with limited tools and no evidence of centralized state authority, devote such immense labor to building massive concentric rings of stone? The effort must have required generations of work and cooperation across communities. Was this monument a unifying project, a way of binding disparate groups together in shared identity and purpose? Or was it instead the work of a powerful elite, capable of commanding labor on a vast scale, their authority reinforced by the enduring presence of this stone circle? Theories beyond mainstream archaeology deepen the intrigue. Some argue that the structure's design, especially its resemblance to wheels or spirals, points to symbolic or esoteric knowledge, perhaps connected to cycles of life and death or to cosmologies now long forgotten. Others see in it echoes of structures elsewhere, from the stone circles of Europe to the geoglyphs of South America, suggesting the possibility of ancient cultural links stretching across continents. More speculative voices propose that el-Hiri functioned as an energy site, aligned with Earth forces or ley lines, or even as a kind of stargate, a portal through which ancient peoples imagined journeys between worlds. Of course, such ideas remain unverified, but they highlight how el-Hiri resists easy categorization. Unlike many ruins, it offers no clear story, no inscriptions, no art to guide interpretation. Instead, it stands as raw architecture, mute and enigmatic, inviting anyone who encounters it to speculate, to wonder, to question. The setting only amplifies the mystery. The Golan Heights, a volcanic plateau carved by time and shifting earth, is itself a landscape of contrasts. Fertile valleys cut by stark outcrops of black basalt, ancient trade routes winding past isolated ridges. For millennia, this land has been a crossroads, contested and traversed by countless cultures. Within this rugged terrain, el-Hiri seems almost hidden, a monument that endures not by dominating its environment, but by merging with it, as if meant to be discovered only from above, centuries after its builders were gone. Walking among its stones today, one cannot help but feel the weight of deep time. The rings seem endless, leading inward but never resolving. The stones, rough-hewn and unshaped, speak of human effort on a scale almost beyond comprehension, yet also of a deliberate choice to leave the rock in its raw, natural state. Was this intentional, a way of emphasizing the primal power of the land itself? The unanswered questions linger in the air. Was el-Hiri a tomb, a temple, a calendar, or something else entirely? Was it built to honor ancestors, to track the stars, to mark territory, or to embody ideas we can no longer imagine? And why, despite its grandeur, does it seem to stand outside the flow of history, a monument unclaimed by any known culture, a structure that resists being fully explained? As the sun sets over the Golan Heights, casting long shadows across the basalt rings, the site takes on an otherworldly presence. The air cools, the stones darken, and the spirals seem to retreat once more into silence. el-Hiri holds its secrets tightly, as it has for over 5,000 years. And so the question remains: what vision, what belief, compelled its builders to lay stone upon stone, circle upon circle, until a wheel of mystery turned forever in the heart of this ancient land? High in the verdant mountains of southern Colombia, where mist drifts through valleys dense with vegetation and the sound of flowing rivers echoes against green slopes, stands one of the most enigmatic archaeological landscapes in the world. Here, scattered across the rolling terrain of San Agustin, are hundreds of stone statues and monoliths, silent guardians carved from volcanic rock, some towering, others modest, but all charged with a sense of timeless presence. They stand in rows, clusters, and solitary watchfulness, staring with wide eyes that seem to gaze far beyond the horizon, their expressions frozen between the human and the divine. Approaching the San Agustin monoliths, one is struck by their diversity. Some depict stern-faced figures with large round eyes, prominent noses, and mouths locked in enigmatic grimaces. Others blend human features with those of jaguars, eagles, and serpents, their forms merging into composite beings that seem to belong to both earth and spirit. Many cradle objects, a staff, a cup, or a child, symbols whose meanings remain shrouded. Some figures bear grins that appear almost playful, while others project power, menace, or serenity. In the silence of the surrounding forest, their presence feels almost animate, as though watching, waiting, or guarding something long forgotten. Archaeologists believe the San Agustin culture flourished here between 1000 BC and 1500 AD, though the earliest carvings may date back to the first millennium BC. And yet, despite centuries of study, little is truly known about the people who created these monoliths. They left no written records, no clear mythology etched in stone, and little in the way of architectural remains beyond burial mounds and ceremonial platforms. Their society seems to have revolved around rituals of death and rebirth, with many of the statues standing beside tombs or arranged in sacred spaces that suggest complex funerary practices. The prevailing theory holds that the San Agustin monoliths were created as guardians of the dead, protectors of tombs and ceremonial sites. Their fierce expressions and hybrid forms may have been intended to ward off intruders or malevolent spirits. But the carvings also hint at something more. Why did this ancient culture invest such extraordinary effort into sculpting hundreds of statues, some weighing several tons, and scattering them across the landscape? What did these beings represent in their cosmology? Were they gods, ancestors, shamans, or symbolic embodiments of natural forces? The placement of the monoliths adds another layer of intrigue. Many stand in carefully arranged complexes, where tombs, platforms, and statues interact in deliberate patterns. Some are aligned with the paths of rivers or perched on hilltops, as if designed to link the human world with the cosmic. Could these alignments reflect astronomical knowledge, an attempt to mirror the heavens on Earth? Some researchers suggest that the jaguar, a recurring motif, was more than an animal symbol. It may have represented a celestial force, an embodiment of strength, or a shamanic transformation into other realms. Yet the deeper one looks, the stranger the images become. Some statues depict beings with fanged mouths and clawed hands, while others cradle serpents or wear masks that transform their faces into something distinctly unhuman. Were these depictions literal or symbolic visions of altered states of consciousness? Were they capturing myths or glimpses of beings that their culture believed inhabited another plane of existence? The ambiguity of expression, between protector and monster, between human and animal, invites speculation. More fringe theories push the enigma further. Some researchers have proposed that the San Agustin statues may represent not mythological beings, but visitors, figures from beyond, rendered in stone by a culture struggling to explain what it encountered. The statues' disproportionately large heads, staring eyes, and hybrid bodies have been compared to beings in other mythic traditions around the world. Were these carvings attempts to capture encounters with gods, or something even more extraordinary? Others note that the statue's themes of guardianship and transformation bear a resemblance to traditions from other parts of the globe. Could there have been contact, however unlikely, between ancient peoples separated by oceans and continents? Or is the similarity better explained by shared archetypes of human imagination, recurring expressions of universal fears, beliefs, and desires? Even mainstream archaeologists remain puzzled by the sheer scale of the San Agustin site. More than 500 statues have been discovered, but many still lie buried beneath layers of soil and vegetation. Why did this culture carve so many? Were they part of a single coherent religious system, or the accumulated expressions of generations, each adding their own images to a sacred landscape? And why, after centuries of thriving, did the San Agustin culture fade away, leaving only these stone sentinels behind? The monoliths themselves raise practical questions. The statues are carved from volcanic tuff, a rock abundant in the region, yet the precision of the work is striking. The figures are symmetrical, their lines bold and deliberate. Some stand over 20 feet tall. How did this society, with no evidence of advanced tools, carve and move such massive stones? The work implies not only skill, but also social organization capable of mobilizing large numbers of workers. What social structure enabled this? And what drove such effort, directed not toward cities or fortresses, but toward statues meant to watch over the dead? As the mist descends over the mountains of San Agustin, the atmosphere becomes otherworldly. The statues loom through the fog, their forms shifting and dissolving in the half-light, like visions from another age. The stillness of the landscape amplifies their presence, leaving the visitor with a sense of standing on the threshold between worlds. Were these stones meant to embody that very threshold, to serve as intermediaries between the living and the spirits, between earth and sky, between time and eternity? The San Agustin monoliths remain, and will remain, enigmatic. Their eyes seem to follow, their expressions unreadable, their forms both familiar and alien. Were they guardians, deities, ancestors, or something else entirely? What beliefs guided the hands that shaped them, and what visions filled the minds of their creators? As we walk among them today, we are left only with the silence of stone and the lingering question, what truths of the ancient world still lie hidden within their unblinking gaze? On the banks of the Danube River, where the waters carve a deep passage through the Iron Gates Gorge, lies a place that seems to bridge the boundary between prehistory and myth. This is Lepenski Vir, one of the oldest known permanent settlements in Europe, nestled in what is today Serbia. The river flows steadily here, its currents powerful and ancient, while the surrounding cliffs rise like walls, guarding a secret that has endured for millennia. Among these landscapes, archaeologists have uncovered not only the remains of dwellings, but also stone sculptures and architectural patterns that hint at a complexity far beyond what might be expected of a Mesolithic community. At first glance, Lepenski Vir appears like many other archaeological sites, a cluster of foundations, traces of hearths, scattered tools. Yet the deeper one looks, the more the settlement reveals an unusual character. Dating back to around 7000 BC, it is not merely a temporary camp of hunter-gatherers. Instead, it shows evidence of a planned settlement with houses arranged in deliberate order, forming what appear to be geometric patterns. The houses themselves were built with trapezoidal bases, their floors carefully plastered and maintained, suggesting an architectural uniformity rare for its time. Why would such an early community adopt a standardized design? Was this simply practical, or did it hold symbolic or ritual meaning? Adding to the mystery are the sculptures, carved river stones, shaped into forms that seem part human, part fish. With wide, staring eyes and gaping mouths, these figures look as if they emerged from the very waters of the Danube. Some appear serene, others menacing, but all exude a presence that feels purposeful. Archaeologists have interpreted them as representations of river deities or ancestral spirits, yet no definitive explanation exists. Were they gods invoked for protection, fertility, or success in fishing? Or do they represent something more abstract, a worldview shaped by a profound relationship with the river itself? Lepenski Vir's location underscores its strangeness. The Danube here is both a source of life and a formidable barrier, teeming with fish, but also treacherous with rapids. The settlement seems to have thrived on this abundance, with evidence of a diet rich in sturgeon and other river species. But why here, in this particular spot? did such an organized and enduring community arise? Was the site chosen merely for its resources? Or was there something about the Iron Gate's gorge that carried deeper significance, perhaps as a liminal space between worlds, a natural stage for ritual and myth? Some scholars suggest that Lepenski Vir represents a unique transitional society, standing between the old ways of hunting and gathering and the new era of agriculture. The people here appear to have maintained complex traditions while beginning to experiment with domestication and trade. Yet, this explanation leaves gaps. The uniformity of their architecture, the repeated patterns of settlement, and the prominence of their sculptural art hint at shared beliefs and practices not easily explained by survival needs alone. More speculative theories push the boundaries of interpretation. Some have wondered whether the trapezoidal houses reflect astronomical alignments, their angles echoing patterns of the sun or stars. Could Lepenski Vir have functioned as both a village and an observatory, its design encoding a cosmic order? The stone figures, with their fish-like attributes, have led others to suggest an origin myth involving aquatic beings, perhaps a memory of floods or a belief in life emerging from water. Were these hybrid statues symbols of transformation, linking the human to the eternal cycles of nature? The site also raises questions about continuity. Did Lepenski Vir influence later European cultures, or was it an isolated phenomenon that flourished for a time and then disappeared? Some researchers argue that the motifs and symbols found here resonate faintly in later traditions across the Balkans and beyond, as if echoes of this ancient worldview traveled through generations. Others remain cautious, noting that without written records, such connections remain speculative at best. And yet, standing in the shadow of the Iron Gates, one cannot help but wonder whether the people of Lepenski Vir saw themselves as guardians of a sacred place. Their settlement endured for centuries, rebuilt in phases, each generation maintaining the same distinctive patterns. Was this persistence a reflection of tradition or of obligation, an unspoken duty to keep the alignment of their homes and their rituals intact? What compelled them to remain here on this narrow strip of land long after other groups might have moved on? The sculptures, too, continue to defy easy categorization. Their haunting faces, simultaneously human and otherworldly, evoke an uncanny familiarity. Do they represent ancestors gazing back across time, or deities demanding reverence? Could they even be symbolic records of encounters or visions, moments in which the ordinary world gave way to something extraordinary? Their silent forms, carved thousands of years ago, seem to ask more questions than they answer. As twilight falls over the Danube, the site of Lepenski Vir takes on an atmosphere of quiet mystery. The outlines of the trapezoidal foundations catch the fading light, while the river glimmers with the same flow that sustained these ancient people. One is left to imagine them gathering by the water, conducting rituals, shaping their enigmatic statues, and passing down traditions that we can only partially reconstruct today. What knowledge did the builders of Lepenski Vir possess that we no longer understand? Were their designs and carvings simple expressions of daily life, or windows into a cosmology now lost? As the river continues its endless journey through the gorge, the settlement remains a puzzle, a place where the line between history and myth blurs. Perhaps the true meaning of Lepenski Vir lies not in what we can prove, but in what we still cannot explain, an enduring reminder that the past holds secrets yet to be revealed. In the heart of the Ural Mountains, a region often cloaked in mist and shadow, a remarkable artifact was pulled from the depths of the earth, an object so ancient, so enigmatic, that it continues to puzzle archaeologists and historians to this day. This is the Shigir idol, a towering wooden monument unearthed from a peat bog in the late 19th century, preserved by the very soil and water that swallowed it thousands of years ago. When first recovered in 1894, the idol was little more than fragments of carved larchwood, darkened with age but still bearing unmistakable patterns. Over time, researchers reconstructed it into a massive figure, nearly 17 feet tall, making it the oldest known wooden sculpture in the world, dated to around 7500 BC. To put this into perspective, the idol predates the pyramids of Egypt by over 7,000 years. It was created by Mesolithic hunter-gatherers, long before agriculture had transformed human society. Yet its carvings, its geometric designs, and its haunting faces suggest a complexity of thought and belief rarely associated with people of that era. The idol's surface is covered with strange markings, zigzag lines, chevrons, herringbone patterns, and abstract motifs. Interspersed among these designs are faces, elongated and almost mask-like, each one seemingly gazing outward into eternity. Scholars have debated the meaning of these carvings for decades. Some argue they may represent a mythological narrative, a story carved into wood and meant to be read like a sacred text. Others suggest they symbolize spirits or deities, perhaps guardians of the natural world, encoded into the idol's long body. Could these geometric forms be more than decoration? Might they reflect a symbolic language, now lost to us? Even the choice of material raises questions. The idol was carved from a single larch tree, one estimated to have been more than a century old. Imagine the effort required to fell such a tree with stone tools, then shape it into such a towering monument. Why would Mesolithic people invest so much labor into something that served no obvious practical purpose? The answer may lie in the bog itself. Peat bogs, in many cultures, are seen as liminal places, thresholds between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. Was the Shigar idol placed deliberately in the bog as part of a ritual offering, intended to stand as an eternal mediator between humanity and the unseen forces they revered? The bog preserved it with uncanny perfection, locking its carvings in place for over 9 millennia. Yet its preservation also shrouded its context. No settlement remains, no accompanying artifacts, no clues to the culture that produced it have been found nearby. It stands in isolation, a lone voice from a vanished people. What stories might have been told around it? Was it a marker of territory, a spiritual guide, or something else entirely? Speculative theories abound. Some have drawn parallels between the idol's motifs and later symbols found in rock art across Eurasia, suggesting that it may have been part of a larger symbolic tradition stretching across vast regions. Others see the geometric carvings as a kind of proto-writing, an attempt to encode knowledge in abstract form much earlier than the earliest known scripts. Could the Shigar idol represent humanity's first steps toward written communication? More fringe interpretations imagine the idol as evidence of forgotten civilizations, or even contact with beings beyond this world. The idol's elongated faces and enigmatic shapes have been compared to archetypes found in myths across continents. Was it inspired by encounters with entities now relegated to legend? Or are we projecting our modern imaginations onto an artifact whose true meaning has simply been lost to time? The Shigar idol also forces us to reconsider our assumptions about Mesolithic societies. Too often they are portrayed as simple bands of foragers, focused solely on survival. Yet here we see evidence of symbolic thought, of abstract design, of a willingness to dedicate immense time and resources to something that transcended the immediate needs of food and shelter. Did these people possess a worldview more sophisticated than we credit them for? One in which ritual, cosmology, and the sacred were inseparable from daily life? As researchers continue to study the idol, new technologies bring more questions than answers. Microscopic analysis has revealed that the carvings were made with stone tools of remarkable precision, their incisions deliberate and careful. radiocarbon dating has pushed its age further back than once thought, deep into a time when most of the world's monumental traditions had not yet begun. Yet no parallel exists. No second idol has ever been found. It remains unique. Was it the work of a singular visionary, or the product of a collective tradition that has otherwise vanished? Standing before the reconstructed Shigir idol today, one is struck not only by its scale, but by its presence. The elongated form, the repeating faces, the cryptic lines, they seem to whisper across time, hinting at meanings we cannot fully grasp. It is at once haunting and majestic, a message carved into wood by hands that belonged to a people long gone. What did they hope to preserve in those lines? A myth? A warning? A celebration of life, or a meditation on death? The idol offers no clear answers. Instead, it remains suspended between interpretation and enigma, inviting us to wonder at the vast depths of human imagination in ages long before recorded history. Perhaps that is its greatest power, not in what it tells us, but in what it withholds. In the silence of its carved faces and the mystery of its symbols, the Shigir idol reminds us that the human story is older, richer, and far stranger than we often assume. And as the peat bogs of the Urals continue to guard their secrets, we are left to ask, how many more voices from the deep past remain hidden, waiting to emerge? Beneath the searing Egyptian sun, in the granite quarries of Aswan, lies one of antiquity's most puzzling relics. Carved directly into the bedrock, half-formed and forever frozen in time, stretches the immense shape of what would have been the largest known obelisk ever attempted. Known simply as the unfinished obelisk, this monumental project speaks of ambition, skill, and mystery, and raises questions that remain unanswered even today. At first glance, it appears as though a colossal stone pillar is simply lying on its side, partially freed from the earth. Yet closer inspection reveals its true nature. This is not a fallen monument, but one abandoned mid-creation. Measuring more than 137 feet in length and estimated to weigh around 1,200 tons, it surpasses any obelisk that the ancient Egyptians successfully completed. Had it been finished, it would have stood as the tallest and most massive single piece of stone ever raised in the ancient world. But it never left the quarry. According to mainstream archaeology, the obelisk was commissioned during the reign of Queen Hatshepsut in the 15th century BC. The quarries at Aswan were famed for their fine pink granite, used in countless temples and monuments across Egypt. Workers would have carved channels around the block, chiseling tirelessly with dolerite-pounding stones to separate it from the bedrock. Yet something went wrong. A network of deep cracks formed along its body, rendering the obelisk unusable. Rather than salvage it, the builders abandoned the effort, leaving behind this silent testament to both human ambition and human limitation. And yet, when one stands before the unfinished obelisk, the sense of awe is undeniable. How, thousands of years ago, did a civilization without modern cranes or steel tools attempt such a feat? Egyptologists have proposed methods. Immense teams of laborers with copper and dolerite tools, sledges dragged over lubricated sand, and carefully engineered ramps. Such explanations fit within what we know of Egyptian ingenuity. But when faced with a single block weighing 1,200 tons, nearly twice the weight of the largest stones at Stonehenge, one cannot help but pause. Would the ancient builders truly have been able to move such a monolith? No completed obelisk comes close to this scale. The largest successfully raised, the Lateran obelisk in Rome, weighs about 455 tons, far less than what the Aswan attempt would have required. Was the unfinished obelisk an overreach? A dream too ambitious even for the master builders of the Nile? Or might its abandonment conceal a deeper story, one lost to the shifting sands of history? The site itself reveals intriguing details. Dolerite pounders, the spherical hammerstones used for quarrying, litter the area, suggesting immense manual labor. The smoothness of the quarry floor and the precision of the carved channels seem almost at odds with the idea of primitive pounding alone. Could such neatness have been achieved solely with handheld stones? Some researchers suggest yes, noting that with enough time and manpower, such results are possible. Others, however, point to the uniformity of the cuts and wonder whether techniques now forgotten were once employed. This sense of mystery has fueled alternative interpretations. Some fringe theorists propose that the ancient Egyptians possessed advanced stoneworking methods, technologies now lost to time. The precision of other monuments, such as the Great Pyramid or the obelisks standing at Karnak and Luxor, is often cited in support of these claims. Could the unfinished obelisk represent not just ambition, but also evidence of an experimental technique gone awry? Speculation extends further. The sheer scale of the obelisk, had it been erected, would have towered above the landscape like a message carved in stone to the heavens. Was it intended as a divine symbol, a representation of the sun's rays solidified in granite, as many scholars believe? Or could it have served another, more enigmatic purpose, perhaps as a marker aligned with celestial bodies, much like other ancient monuments around the world? The idea is tantalizing, though difficult to prove. Even in its incomplete state, the obelisk prompts another question. Was its abandonment truly due to natural cracks in the granite? Or might the cracks have formed later, long after the workers had departed? If so, could there have been another reason for leaving the project unfinished, economic, political, or religious? The reign of Hatshepsut, though powerful, was followed by political upheaval. Could changing priorities, rather than engineering failure, have sealed the obelisk's fate? Standing in the quarry today, the unfinished obelisk evokes a strange duality. It is both a symbol of failure and of extraordinary ambition. On one hand, it remains incomplete, locked in the earth where it began. On the other, it stands as proof of the Egyptians' relentless drive to push the boundaries of stone, scale, and symbolism. What if it had been completed? Would it have altered the skyline of ancient Egypt, rising higher than any other monument? Would it have changed how we understand the capabilities of those who built it? Or would it, like so many other works of antiquity, simply have blended into the long, majestic narrative of Egyptian achievement, its mystery unnoticed, its struggle forgotten? The unfinished obelisk remains where it was left, an eternal work in progress. Perhaps that is why it speaks to us so profoundly. It reveals not only the triumphs of a civilization, but also the limits of its power. And as we gaze upon its massive, silent form, we cannot help but ask, did the ancient builders know something we do not? Or is the mystery of the unfinished obelisk a reminder that even the greatest civilizations were subject to the same challenges of ambition, failure, and the unknown? Here, in the quiet of the Aswan quarry, the stone whispers across millennia, inviting us to listen and to wonder what secrets of ancient craftsmanship still lie buried in the granite. In the heart of the arid Peruvian desert, where the winds sweep fine sand across endless plains and the horizon shimmers with heat, rise the enigmatic remnants of Cahuachi. Unlike the towering stone pyramids of Egypt or the step temples of Mesoamerica, these are earthen pyramids, fragile, worn, and easily overlooked. Yet, hidden beneath their crumbling facades lies a story that continues to intrigue archaeologists, historians, and seekers of mysteries alike. Cahuachi was once the great ceremonial center of the Nazca culture, a people famed for the enormous geoglyphs carved into the desert floor. Here, on the southern coast of Peru, they built a sacred city of adobe pyramids, sprawling plazas, and ceremonial courtyards. But who exactly gathered here, and for what purpose? That remains uncertain. The site itself covers more than 600 acres, with at least 40 mounds that once stood as pyramids. Today, most appear as eroded hills of earth, their shapes softened by centuries of wind and time. But excavation has revealed that they were once deliberate, planned structures, platforms layered with adobe bricks, built up in stages. Unlike other pyramid complexes that served as royal tombs or political centers, Kawachi reveals no evidence of permanent habitation. Instead, it seems to have been a pilgrimage site, a sacred gathering place where thousands may have convened for rituals, feasts, and offerings. What makes Kawachi particularly mysterious is its connection to the Nazca lines, the massive geoglyphs etched into the desert nearby. For decades, scholars have debated their purpose. Were they astronomical markers, irrigation maps, or pathways for religious ceremonies? Some researchers propose that Kawachi was the spiritual hub from which the lines originated. Pilgrims may have traveled here to participate in rituals that extended into the desert landscape itself, walking the lines as acts of devotion. If true, then the pyramids were not merely buildings. They were part of a vast ritual theater that united earth, sky, and belief. Artifacts unearthed at the site deepen the mystery. Excavations have uncovered textiles of extraordinary craftsmanship, painted ceramics adorned with symbolic figures, and even trophy heads, human skulls modified for ritual purposes. These finds suggest that Kawachi was not only a place of worship, but also of sacrifice. But sacrifice to what? Or to whom? Some theories suggest the Nazca people sought to appease deities of water and fertility. Living in one of the driest regions on Earth, their survival depended on the unpredictable arrival of seasonal rains. Could the pyramids have been built as sacred altars to petition the gods of rain? The sheer scale of the site raises questions about its social organization. Constructing such vast platforms of adobe would have required immense coordination, resources, and labor. Yet the Nazca are not known for having a centralized state or empire like the later Inca. How then did they mobilize people to build and maintain such a monumental complex? Was it through religious devotion alone? Or does this hint at a form of social or political structure not yet fully understood? Some scholars propose that Kawachi may not have been a permanent city, but a place of episodic gathering, a kind of desert Mecca where rituals unfolded during key times of the year. This might explain the lack of domestic dwellings and the abundance of ceremonial objects. Yet, others argue that the site's abandonment around AD 400 may reflect deeper changes, perhaps environmental collapse, shifts in religious practice, or even social unrest. Here, the mystery takes on a speculative edge. Some fringe theories link the Nazca lines and Kawachi pyramids to astronomical knowledge far more advanced than expected. Were the pyramids aligned to celestial events, serving as observation points for the movements of stars and planets? Or could they have been part of an even more enigmatic tradition? Structures meant to connect with forces beyond human comprehension. Adding to the puzzle is the way the pyramids were abandoned. Archaeologists note that the structures seem to have been deliberately filled in before the site was deserted, as if sealed off. Was this an act of reverence, closing a sacred place no longer in use? Or was it an attempt to erase something dangerous, a ritual shutting down of powers that could not be left untended? The desert itself guards Kawachi closely. From a distance, the pyramids blend with the natural landscape, their outlines softened, their edges blurred. Only when one walks among them does their scale and intent emerge. Adobe bricks, shaped by human hands more than 15 centuries ago, still hold the imprint of fingers. Standing here, it is impossible not to wonder at the sheer devotion of a culture willing to invest so much in earth and clay, only to leave it behind. Perhaps the greatest mystery of Kawachi lies in its silence. Unlike the hieroglyphs of Egypt or the codices of the Maya, the Nazca left no written records. Their story survives only through these monumental traces, lines across the desert, pottery painted with enigmatic symbols, pyramids eroded by time. And yet, these silent monuments speak volumes. They remind us that human belief, ritual, and imagination can shape landscapes as powerfully as stone and steel. What did the Nazca see when they looked to the sky or down at their own vast creations stretching across the desert? Were the pyramids built to honor gods of rain, to align with stars, or to channel forces still unknown? The answers remain elusive, buried beneath centuries of sand and speculation. And so, Kawachi continues to stand as both ruin and riddle, an unfinished sentence in the history of human civilization. As the desert winds whisper across its adobe walls, one cannot help but wonder, what truths remain hidden in the dust of these pyramids, waiting for the day when the earth finally gives them back? Beneath the scorching sun of the Sudanese desert, where rolling dunes stretch endlessly toward the horizon, stand the pyramids of Muru, sharp, angular silhouettes rising from golden sands. Unlike the colossal and widely known pyramids of Egypt, these structures are smaller, steeper, and clustered closely together, their pointed forms giving the impression of an otherworldly city half buried in time. Many are partially broken, their once proud tips shattered, yet the stark beauty of their geometry lingers. In this silent necropolis, the winds carry whispers of kings and queens long forgotten, rulers of an ancient civilization that thrived where few today would think possible. These pyramids belonged to the kingdom of Kush, a powerful civilization that emerged south of Egypt along the fertile banks of the Nile. From roughly 800 BC to AD 350, Muru was the capital of this kingdom, a thriving city of palaces, temples, and industry. The pyramids served as royal tombs for Kushite kings, queens, and nobles, marking the desert as both a sacred and political landscape. Over 200 of them rise from the sand, making Muru one of the densest concentrations of pyramids in the world. Yet despite their abundance, they remain strangely overlooked in popular history, overshadowed by their northern neighbors. At first glance, their purpose seems straightforward. They were burial monuments, much like those of Egypt. But closer examination raises questions that resist simple answers. Why did the Kushites, who once conquered and ruled Egypt as pharaohs themselves, build pyramids so different in style? The Meroitic pyramids are far smaller and much steeper than those at Giza, often fronted by small chapels covered in hieroglyphic inscriptions. This deliberate distinction may have symbolized a cultural identity separate from Egypt, but was it only that? Could there have been deeper, more esoteric reasons for such architectural divergence? Excavations of these tombs have revealed treasures, ornaments of gold, finely crafted pottery, and objects that link the Kushite world to distant lands through trade. Ivory, incense, and even goods from as far away as the Mediterranean hint at a vast network of connections. The wealth and artistry speak of a kingdom that was not isolated, but engaged in an exchange of goods, ideas, and beliefs across continents. Yet, the Meroitic script, carved onto temple walls and funerary stelae, remains largely undeciphered. What knowledge, what stories, what truths about the pyramids might still lie locked in this unreadable language? The tombs themselves also provoke deeper mystery. Many have been plundered across centuries, most notoriously in the 19th century, when treasure hunters used dynamite to blast into their chambers. What was lost to greed and destruction may never be known. But in the fragments that remain, scholars see evidence of hybrid religious practices, Egyptian gods blended with Nubian deities, traditional rites reshaped into something uniquely Kushite. Were these pyramids merely monuments to the dead, or were they also constructed as gateways between worlds, channels of power connecting the living to the divine? Adding to the intrigue is the sudden decline of Muru. By the mid-4th century AD, the city was abandoned, its pyramids left to the desert. Historians suggest multiple causes: shifting trade routes, overexploitation of resources, or invasions by neighboring powers. Yet no definitive explanation exists. How does a civilization capable of such enduring monuments simply fade away, leaving behind stone markers but no clear story of its end? Some fringe theories stretch further. Could the unusual design of the pyramids have held astronomical significance, aligning with stars or celestial events now forgotten? Might the Kushites have possessed knowledge of the heavens, encoded in the steep angles and precise orientations of their tombs? Others speculate whether the sharp, slender proportions of Muru's pyramids served not only symbolic purposes but functional ones, perhaps intended to focus or channel unseen energies, much as some alternative thinkers propose about other ancient monuments worldwide. While mainstream archaeology remains cautious, the unanswered questions invite wonder. Why did the Kushite rulers invest such immense resources into building hundreds of pyramids in such inhospitable terrain? What role did the desert itself play in their cosmology? Could the endless sands have been seen not as a barrier, but as a sacred expanse, a place where human ambition and divine presence might converge? Today, the pyramids of Muru rise in silence, their weathered stones glowing red at sunset, their shadows stretching long across the desert floor. Few tourists wander here, and fewer still grasp the magnitude of what they see. Each pyramid, whether standing intact or reduced to rubble, is a fragment of a forgotten narrative, a puzzle piece in the grand story of human civilization. Yet, without the key to the Meroitic script, the voices of those who built them remain silent, their intentions obscured. And so, the mystery endures. Were the pyramids of Muru simply tombs, or were they something more? A sacred technology, a symbolic language carved in stone, a message directed not to their contemporaries but to the future. What wisdom still lies hidden beneath the sand, waiting for discovery? As the desert wind shifts and the pyramids stand against the horizon, one cannot help but wonder, do these ruins guard not only the memory of a lost kingdom, but also secrets that reach far beyond our current understanding of the ancient world? High in the mountains of northwestern Iran, where rolling hills give way to stark volcanic ridges, lies a place both breathtaking and enigmatic: Chavín, the throne of Solomon. Surrounded by rugged terrain, the site emerges suddenly, a vast walled complex encircling a shimmering, sapphire-colored lake at its center. The lake, fed by underground springs, never dries, even in the most punishing summers. Yet it has no outlet, a still, unfathomable pool that seems to descend endlessly into the earth. For centuries, its deep blue waters have been a focal point of myth, ritual, and speculation. To approach Chavín is to step into a space where the natural and the sacred blur into one. Archaeological evidence identifies the site as an important religious and political center for successive empires. The Sasanian dynasty, ruling from the 3rd to the 7th century AD, built magnificent fire temples and sanctuaries here. Most notable was the temple dedicated to Anahita, the goddess of water, and a grand structure devoted to Atar, the sacred fire central to Zoroastrian worship. Later, the Mongols in the 13th century constructed a summer palace around the lake, embedding their own architectural vision into the already ancient complex. The continuity of use across centuries suggests Chavín held a power that transcended shifting rulers and religions. But what was that power, and why this place? The name itself deepens the intrigue. Though no evidence ties the site to the biblical King Solomon, traditions across the Middle East wove his legend into its stones. Solomon, remembered as a wise and powerful ruler, was also believed to have commanded the forces of nature and even spirits. Could the bottomless lake and its eerie stillness have inspired locals to attribute it to his dominion? And why did generations insist that this site, above all others, must be linked to him? Geology, too, adds layers to the mystery. The lake is formed by a deep volcanic vent, its waters rich in minerals that lend it that unearthly color. Locals have long claimed that the lake has no bottom, and while modern measurements confirm its depth is around 60 meters, the illusion of infinity persists. Items thrown into its waters, from offerings to refuse, reportedly vanish without trace. Was this natural phenomenon one reason ancient peoples saw the lake as a portal between worlds? A place where gifts to the divine could be delivered directly to the unseen? Archaeological excavations reveal grand halls, fortified walls, and elaborate designs that speak to advanced engineering and aesthetic vision. Yet many questions remain. How did the Sasanians, with the tools of their age, create such enduring monuments atop volcanic terrain? Why concentrate so much religious significance on a remote plateau when easier locations existed in the valleys below? Speculation extends beyond conventional history. Some suggest the site's alignment may have held astronomical meaning, pointing to the positioning of temples and walls relative to the solstices or certain star patterns. Could Chavín have been a kind of celestial observatory as well as a sacred center? Others argue that the convergence of fire and water, two opposing yet essential elements, was no accident. The juxtaposition of a fire temple beside an eternal lake might have symbolized a universal balance, a cosmic harmony that priests sought to preserve. Then there are the more fringe theories. The bottomless lake, with its volcanic origins, has inspired suggestions of hidden tunnels or chambers beneath, perhaps even vaults storing forgotten relics. Legends whisper that treasures or sacred texts may lie at its depths beyond human reach. Some go further, imagining Chavín as a node in an ancient network of power centers stretching across the globe, linked by ley lines or unseen forces. Such ideas cannot be proven, but their persistence highlights how powerfully the site ignites the imagination. Even mainstream archaeology leaves much unresolved. For instance, why did the Sasanians abandon the site after centuries of devotion? Was it political upheaval, environmental change, or perhaps a shift in spiritual focus that led them away from their throne of fire and water? And why did the Mongols, centuries later, return to build anew upon its ruins, as though compelled to reawaken a legacy older than themselves? Walking the ruins today, visitors pass through massive gates, along crumbled walls, and into the remains of vaulted chambers. The stones, weathered yet enduring, retain a quiet authority. The lake glimmers at the center, serene, untouchable, as though guarding secrets older than empire. It is easy to imagine priests tending eternal flames within the temple, their chants rising into the mountain air. It is just as easy to picture conquerors standing at the water's edge, gazing into its depths and wondering what forces lay hidden below. Chavín remains a place of dualities, fire and water, myth and history, permanence and disappearance. Each stone tells part of a story, but never the whole. Each ripple in the lake suggests depth beyond what can be measured. And so, the question lingers. Was this a sanctuary for gods, a throne for kings, or a doorway to something far greater than we can comprehend? As the wind sweeps across the plateau and the lake reflects the changing sky, one cannot escape the sense that Chavín is more than a ruin. It is a riddle set in stone and water, waiting still for an answer. On the windswept plains of central Turkey, the ruins of Hattusa emerge like a whisper from the distant past. Once the capital of the powerful Hittite Empire, Its stone walls still cling to the rugged hillsides, hinting at a city that once commanded armies, negotiated with pharaohs, and stood at the center of a world long vanished. Among the most striking of its remains lies the Lion Gate, a formidable portal carved into massive stone blocks, guarded on either side by imposing lions whose watchful eyes seem to have outlasted the centuries. Weathered yet defiant, these ancient guardians invite us to step into a mystery that is as much about belief and symbolism as it is about stone and mortar. The Lion Gate dates to around the 14th century BC, a time when Hattusa flourished as the beating heart of the Hittite kingdom. The city itself was vast, sprawling over several square kilometers, fortified by immense walls that snaked along the hills for miles. Within its boundaries were palaces, temples, granaries, and administrative buildings, evidence of a highly organized society that once rivaled Egypt and Mesopotamia in power. Yet, for all its grandeur, the entrance at the Lion Gate captures the imagination most vividly. The lions, sculpted in relief from colossal stone blocks, appear both protective and menacing, their mouths parted as though frozen mid-roar. What did these lions represent to the people of Hattusa? In the ancient Near East, lions often symbolized strength, divine authority, and guardianship. Their placement at gates was no accident. They stood as protectors, warding off both human enemies and supernatural forces. In this sense, the Lion Gate served not only as a military defense but also as a spiritual threshold, a liminal space between the everyday world and the sacred heart of the city. But is there more to these guardians than mere symbolism? Some archaeologists suggest that the lions were meant to project the might of the Hittite state to all who entered. Their imposing forms would remind visitors, emissaries, and traders that they were stepping into the realm of a people blessed by powerful gods and led by rulers who commanded divine favor. Others argue that the gate may have held astronomical or ritual significance. Was it aligned with certain celestial events, designed to mark the rising of a star or the solstice sun? Could the lions have represented not just earthly power, but cosmic guardianship as well? The construction itself adds to the enigma. Each stone of the gate weighs several tons, yet they were fitted together with astonishing precision. The Hittites were not known for the kind of megalithic architecture seen in places like Egypt, and yet here we find evidence of advanced stonemasonry. How did they move such massive blocks into position? And why, out of all the possible motifs, did they choose lions as their eternal sentinels? Speculative theories inevitably arise. Some fringe researchers propose that the Lion Gate is older than the Hittites themselves, perhaps built upon an even earlier foundation inherited from a forgotten civilization. They argue that the style and scale of the lions seem out of step with other known Hittite art, suggesting a legacy from a deeper past. If this were true, it would mean that the Hittites repurposed the gate, weaving their own identity into a structure whose origins lay beyond recorded history. Legends and myths further complicate the picture. In Hittite religion, lions were associated with several deities, including the storm god Teshub, a central figure in their pantheon. Was the Lion Gate dedicated to him, ensuring his protection over the city? Or did the lions embody a more universal archetype, a guardian force recognizable across cultures and epochs? The gate, in this light, becomes less a mere entryway and more a dialogue between the human and the divine, stone and spirit, past and present. Yet, Hattusa itself remains a puzzle. Despite its size and significance, the city was eventually abandoned, its once bustling streets left to the silence of the Anatolian highlands. Why? Was it environmental decline, prolonged warfare, or shifting trade routes that led to its fall? Or could there have been something more mysterious, an event or catastrophe lost to time that compelled the Hittites to leave their capital behind? If the Lion Gate could speak, what stories might it tell of those final days? Today, standing before the gate, one feels an uncanny sensation. The lions, eroded yet unmistakably powerful, still seem alive. Their eyes, carved millennia ago, follow the visitor with a gaze that is both timeless and unsettling. The threshold they guard is no longer a passage into an empire, but into the unknown, into the enduring questions of human history. Why did the Hittites choose this site, this design, this symbolism? Were the lions merely expressions of cultural pride, or did they embody a deeper connection to forces beyond human understanding? Is the gate a monument to earthly authority, or does it still mark a boundary between the visible and invisible worlds? The Lion Gate of Hattusa stands not only as a relic of stone, but as a riddle left deliberately unsolved. It whispers of kings and gods, of forgotten rituals and vanished empires. And as the Anatolian wind sweeps through its weathered passage, one cannot help but wonder what truths still lie hidden beneath its ancient guardian's gaze, waiting for us to see what the Hittites perhaps always knew. On the high plateau of northeastern Algeria, where the winds sweep across a vast and arid landscape, lie the remains of a city once called the Pompeii of North Africa. Timgad, a Roman colony founded in the 1st century AD, now stands in quiet ruin. Its broad avenues stretch into the distance, framed by crumbling colonnades and half-toppled arches, while scattered mosaics glimmer faintly beneath the dust of centuries. The silence is broken only by the wind, carrying with it the faint echo of voices that once filled this orderly city, soldiers, merchants, families, all long gone, leaving behind a place that seems to defy the passage of time. At first glance, Timgad appears as a textbook example of Roman urban planning. Established under Emperor Trajan around 100 AD, the city was designed with geometric precision. Its grid of streets aligns in perfect symmetry, a hallmark of Roman order and authority. The Cardo Maximus and Decumanus Maximus, the city's two main axes, intersect at right angles, dividing Timgad into neatly arranged quarters. A great forum stood at the center, surrounded by basilicas, temples, libraries, and baths. For Rome, cities like Timgad were more than settlements. They were symbols of empire, proof that Roman civilization could be imposed on distant lands. Yet standing amidst these ruins today, one senses that there is more here than the ordinary expansion of an empire. The sheer scale of Timgad, its remarkable preservation, and certain unexplained details raise questions that go beyond its role as a Roman colonial outpost. Why was such a vast and meticulously planned city built in so remote a location, on the edge of the Sahara? What vision guided its construction? And why, after centuries of prosperity, was it suddenly abandoned to the desert? Archaeological evidence shows that Timgad thrived for nearly 500 years. Its population may have reached 15,000, with theaters capable of seating thousands, aqueducts channeling fresh water, and intricate mosaics that rival those of Rome itself. The library, one of the largest in the empire, could house thousands of scrolls. For a city on the edge of Roman territory, this level of investment seems extraordinary. Was it merely a gesture of imperial pride, or was there something about this location that carried deeper significance? Some researchers suggest that Timgad's alignment may hold clues. Its streets are not oriented randomly, but appear to follow a specific solar pattern. Scholars have noted that the main thoroughfares seem aligned with the rising sun on particular dates, possibly linked to important Roman festivals or even astronomical events. Was Timgad more than a city? Was it also a cosmic map, a place where earthly order mirrored the heavens? Others point to the city's sudden decline as equally mysterious. By the 5th century, Timgad was already fading, attacked by Vandals, later rebuilt by Byzantines, and finally overrun by Berber tribes. But even with these invasions, why was the city not continuously inhabited, repurposed, or rebuilt as so many Roman towns were? Instead, Timgad was swallowed by sand, its memory erased until French archaeologists rediscovered it in the late 19th century. Did environmental shifts, perhaps advancing desertification, make it impossible to sustain? Or was its desertion tied to something more elusive, a symbolic abandonment of a place whose meaning was lost once its builders were gone? The ruins themselves fuel speculation. The Arch of Trajan, rising nearly 40 feet, remains an astonishing testament to Roman engineering. Yet some of its masonry shows irregularities that don't fit the otherwise strict Roman style, leading a handful of fringe theorists to argue that elements of the city predate Trajan's founding. Could Timgad have been built atop an earlier settlement, its Roman identity layered over something far older? Then there are the mosaics, images of deities, hunters, and mythological beings that seem to blend Roman motifs with local traditions. In one famous mosaic, a philosopher gestures toward an inscription that translates to hunting, bathing, playing, laughing, that's life. It feels almost timeless, yet the deeper meaning of some of these artworks remains debated. Were they simple expressions of daily pleasures, or did they encode messages, perhaps blending Roman and Berber cosmologies into something unique? Speculative theories extend further. Some suggest that Timgad's scale and sophistication make little sense for a remote garrison town, and that it may have been intended as a model city, a kind of idealized Rome transplanted onto African soil. Others, looking at the solar alignments, argue that its builders may have been attuned to knowledge that went beyond ordinary architecture, perhaps rooted in traditions inherited from earlier civilizations that once thrived along the Sahara's shifting edges. What makes Timgad so striking is its preservation. Unlike many Roman sites, it was not built over by later generations, nor dismantled for building material. Instead, the sands covered it almost completely, protecting it like a time capsule. When unearthed, its streets, baths, arches, and houses emerged in startling clarity, giving us one of the clearest pictures of Roman urban life anywhere in the empire. Was this preservation mere coincidence, or could it have been in some way intentional? A city left to sleep beneath the desert, waiting for rediscovery. Today, walking along its colonnaded streets, one feels a haunting sense of order amid emptiness. The stones whisper of a life that once thrived, but also of questions that remain unanswered. Why here? Why such ambition, such precision, in so desolate a place? Did Timgad serve merely Rome's imperial agenda, or was there a deeper purpose, something now hidden by the desert sands and the silence of centuries? As the sun sets behind the Arch of Trajan, casting long shadows across the abandoned streets, the question lingers. What secrets does Timgad still hold beneath its ruins, and how much of its story remains untold? Beneath the limestone hills of northern Luzon, where thick forests meet the winding Cagayan River, lies a cavern system shrouded in shadow and silence. The Kailasa Cave, with its yawning chambers and towering rock formations, has long inspired both awe and curiosity. Light filters through a natural opening in the ceiling, casting dramatic beams across cathedral-like spaces, while deep within its hidden recesses, archaeologists have uncovered something far more profound than stalactites or stone columns. Here, in the stillness of the earth, lie tombs, silent graves carved by hands that belonged to people we are only beginning to understand. The Kailasa Cave. Tombs are not merely remnants of burials. They are fragments of a story that stretches back tens of thousands of years. Discovered during excavations in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, The cave revealed skeletal remains whose age pushed back the timeline of human presence in the Philippines by astonishing margins. The most famous among them is a small foot bone, an unassuming fragment that, when studied closely, belonged to a previously unknown species of ancient human. Known today as Homo luzonensis, this enigmatic species lived here as far back as 50,000 to 67,000 years ago. But the burials found in Kailasa tell another layer of the story, one not limited to survival, but to belief, ritual, and a way of relating to death that feels both alien and familiar. Archaeologists have unearthed human bones deliberately placed within the cave's chambers, suggesting acts of burial rather than mere habitation. Why would such an early society, living in an unforgiving landscape, devote time and effort to carefully laying their dead to rest in these hidden hollows? Did they view the cave as sacred ground, a bridge between the living and the unseen? Some explanations point to practicality. Caves offered shelter, natural protection, and stability. Placing the dead within them may have been a matter of convenience, a way of safeguarding bodies from scavengers or the harsh tropical climate. Yet, when one considers the symbolic weight that caves have held across cultures and continents, another possibility emerges. In countless traditions, caves represent portals, entrances to the underworld, wombs of the earth, or places where mortal and divine meet. Could the early inhabitants of Luzon have seen Kailasa in such a light? Were these tombs not just graves, but expressions of a cosmology we no longer understand? The bones themselves add complexity. Many of the remains suggest deliberate positioning, as if arranged with intent. Some are accompanied by artifacts, stone tools or objects that may have held symbolic meaning. The presence of such items raises questions. Did these people believe in an afterlife, one in which the dead would require tools and offerings? Or were the objects markers of identity, tokens meant to honor the role of the deceased within their community? Even more intriguing are the gaps in the archaeological record. For every burial unearthed, there are countless unanswered questions. How widespread was this practice across ancient Luzon? Did Homo luzonensis themselves use Kailasa as a burial site? Or were the tombs associated with later populations, perhaps the ancestors of today's Austronesian peoples? Without written records, we are left with fragments of bone, stone, and silence. Speculation, of course, fills the void. Some fringe theories suggest that the Kailasa burials may hint at contact with other ancient populations across Southeast Asia. Could seafaring groups, long before the dawn of recorded navigation, have carried traditions and rituals that found expression here in northern Luzon? Others go further, proposing connections to the great megalithic cultures of the Pacific. Is it possible that what we see at Kailasa is part of a much larger, forgotten network of belief stretching across islands and oceans? The cave itself seems to invite mystery. Its vast central chamber, often compared to a natural cathedral, inspires reverence even today. Visitors describe a strange quietness, as if the stones themselves hold memory. Light piercing through the ceiling creates shifting patterns, bathing the interior in a glow that feels almost otherworldly. One cannot help but wonder, did the ancients choose this place for burials precisely because of its atmosphere? Did the play of light and shadow convince them that the cave was alive, a threshold between this world and another? Scientific analysis provides only partial answers. Radiocarbon dating confirms astonishing antiquity. Osteological studies reveal the small stature and unique features of Homo luzonensis. Yet beyond the data, the meaning of the tombs eludes us. Were these the earliest expressions of spirituality in the Philippines? Or were they practical measures, later imbued with symbolism by generations who followed. Even today, the Kailasa cave tombs remain little known outside academic circles, overshadowed by more famous discoveries across Asia. Yet in their quiet presence lies a profound question. How far back do our rituals of death truly go? And what do they say about the minds of those who lived tens of millennia before us? As the camera lingers on the cavern's interior, the beam of sunlight shifts, striking the rough limestone floor where bones once rested. The silence deepens, and a question rises unbidden. How many more secrets lie buried here, still hidden within the rock, waiting for the moment when time decides to release them once again?